Thrills and fun
on 93.5 and 107.5.
Boom, baby!
The Fan.
Good Monday morning to you. Kevin and Query here on what is another beautiful looking start to this week in Indianapolis. I'm Kevin Bowen, Jay Query, and Mark Dykton alongside. You know, guys, I was thinking about this on the drive in. You know, when you see the calendar June 5th, you're in a market that doesn't have a Major League Baseball team. You're kind of like, boy, it's quiet time for sports, this and that. Got to thinking, like, this is actually a pretty busy time, locally and nationally here. From a national angle, of course, we've got a real NBA Finals series after what the Heat did last night in the fourth quarter and tying that one up with Denver. From a local angle, you could go a ton of directions. The Colts still have 2 weeks left in their offseason program. Trace Jackson-Davis working out for the Pacers today. Got a couple college baseball teams still alive. Shout out to Indiana State.
How about the
moving
trees,
on.
baby?
The Sycamores of Indiana State moving on. They win their regional. A great competitive regional from a entertainment standpoint. A lot of close games, but Indiana State moving on to the Super Regional, and IU will have a chance to do that tonight. They actually had a chance to do it last night. Kentucky, after IU beat Kentucky earlier in the weekend, Kentucky took care of business to advance to a final game here. So winner moves on with Kentucky and Indiana. It's a 6 o'clock first pitch coming up later tonight. So, you know, again, from a June 5th standpoint, guys, we got a little bit of everything.
May I ask you a really dumb question?
Sure.
So Indiana State, by advancing to the Super Regional, that is in Omaha or still a step away from Omaha?
Yeah, still a step away. So basically the NCAA baseball bracket is 64 teams divided into 16 four-team regionals.
Right.
And so
Just
Indiana State just advanced out of their regional. So now they are in the Sweet 16, if you will.
Right.
And the Sweet 16 are 8 two-team super regionals. So you get a best-of-3 series. I want to say Indiana State is either, I think it's Arkansas or TCU. They will await the winner. I'm not 100% positive on if that would definitely be on the road. I want to say Arkansas is the
So how many go to Omaha?
Team. 8.
Okay.
Yeah, just 8. So do you remember last year? And I don't know, I probably obnoxiously brought it up a lot. Do you remember like Tennessee being the top college baseball team in the nation and Notre Dame beat them in a super regional?
I remember that.
So that was in Knoxville. That was your best-of-3 series.
And Tennessee was thought to be like
dynasty.
Yeah,
type,
not only the number one team in the country, but like arguably the greatest college baseball team of all time. Right.
So it's double elimination in each of these rounds. So it's double elimination in the regional, then a clean slate. Double elimination in the super regional, clean slate. Then you go to Omaha, where it is also double elimination. So Indiana lost their first game last night. Kentucky already lost earlier in the regional. So we know Indiana State will be playing this coming weekend for a trip to go to Omaha, and the Hoosiers will try to join them later today.
I say if Indiana State advances, and I realize that IU's in play here as well. And who else from the state?
Ball State was eliminated.
I knew that. So everybody has IU merchandise, right? I mean, like, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, last time we did the show, I was wearing an IU t-shirt. Kevin, I think you've worn IU stuff. I've always felt like Indiana State, I know John went there, J&V, but I've always felt like Indiana State's kind of the school that like gets overlooked in the state. If Indiana State goes to Omaha, I'm buying, I will even drive to Terre Haute to do it. I'm buying Indiana State hats for all three of us. We will wear the hats on the air.
I've got my Larry Legend hat. Does that count?
That does kind of count.
Okay.
Okay, good. I'm off the hook there. Mark, you want an Indiana State hat?
Sure.
All right,
now,
there you go.
JMV's got to do a show from Omaha if they make it, right?
For sure.
I mean, alma mater in Omaha? It's kind of one of those fringe sport bucket items.
I think it'd be really cool to attend for sure.
Just incredible to see the year Indiana State has had a really slow start and then has been on an absolute tear since. Iowa, North Carolina, Wright State. That's who they took care of this weekend in Terre Haute. So, again, good Monday morning to you. Jake, Detroit action for yourself this weekend. It seemed like on Friday and Saturday, drivers to say they were...
Man.
I think the overall opinion of the city of Detroit was probably how the drivers felt about that street course, right?
Totally. So a lot of right-hand turns, very tight corners, right-hand turns, and it looked like, and keep in mind though, like we're watching it on Friday we're watching practice, and you're thinking this is going to be a blank show. Like
worse than Nashville last year, they were saying.
Yes. But the thing to keep in mind is it's the first time anybody's been on that track. They can do simulators to get used to it, but first time they've been on the track, and it was super bumpy. But once they kind of figured it out, I thought actually it was a pretty good race. Like it was pretty decent racing. Alex Palou's really good. When Alex Palou gets a lead and gets out in front of cars, he can run away and hide.
So too narrow? Was that the complaint?
It was very narrow. There were really only like two passing areas, yeah. But Will Power did a hell of a job to get himself up towards the front and be able to contend. So overall, I thought it was pretty decent. The one thing I will say about the Detroit race in IndyCar, they sold a huge thing of like paddock suites along the very long straightaway. And then they had a double-sided pit road. And that area, it had, I hate to say this because you try not to, but it had an F1 type look to it. Great. The biggest thing was, I think, for Roger Penske.
What do you mean by that? The F1 type look. I'm picturing
festive.
Paulo Boncaro and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, festive, like the canopied suites, double-deckered all along that are packed with people, people hanging out of windows waving, just.
So is this a bad thing? Is this a...
No, good. I'm saying like a festive atmosphere, like a sold-out festive atmosphere, a party atmosphere. It looked like it was the place to be, Okay. The aerials, the intention for any street course race and the allure of any city that decides to take on an event like that is you want it to showcase your city. It's why Barber and the race down in Alabama, they covet it so much, because when else do people hear about Birmingham, Alabama? And Roger Penske, who, is from Detroit, it has been his hope and desire for a very long time to utilize auto racing to showcase the city of Detroit, to try to overcome the stigma of it's this dilapidated, old, deteriorating, left-to-die town. And so I thought that race, the aerials of it, where you could see the General Motors headquarters and the downtown area and Belle Isle Park and the water right there, I mean, it made the city look, it showed off Detroit. And the aerials were very good, and that's exactly what they wanted to do.
It's early June, but Alex Palou's borderline running away with this series for the season.
You are correct.
I mean, he has been, and again, by all accounts, he's moving teams next season. So, Arrow McLaren, what he's done this year, we saw it last week at the 500. I mean, he was arguably the best car. Rinus VeeKay, of course, hit him in the pits, and that altered his day big time. But 7 races this year, 6 top 5s, 2 wins. His lowest finish is 8th. Just a dominant year so far for Alex Palou. The other, I think, big storyline from yesterday, Jake, when you talk about individuals, Pato Ward teetering on a little too crazy. Emotions getting the best of him.
2 things here. Number one, with Palou, nothing to base this on other than just like eyebrow raise, to your point, Kevin. I think what was a foregone conclusion that he is going to Arrow McLaren next year may not be so as much. I think he might, if he wins a championship with Chip Ganassi, there's been, for a long time in IndyCar, it was always a challenge for someone to be the teammate of Scott Dixon. Not because Scott Dixon's a bad guy. I don't mean that. But I think the perception amongst drivers was that so many resources went into the 9 car for Chip Ganassi Racing. And Dario Franchitti had great success, obviously, in the 10 car. But I think a lot of younger drivers felt like they were intimidated by Dixon's, probably the easiest way to say it. Dixon now clearly like starting to enter his twilight. I mean, just based on age alone. I think Palou may look at it and go, you know what? I've now won 2 championships with this team, and it's kind of shifting to where I'm the guy. However, Arrow McLaren has the immediate accessible pathway to Formula One. So that would be the allure.
In a deeper pocket, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if they're using the F1 money, for sure. But that would, but Chip can pay him a lot. I mean, no doubt. But I think that the allure of that segueing into an F1 ride would be why Palou, if Palou goes to Arrow McLaren, at this point, to me, it means it's because he has the eye on Formula One, which is totally understandable. But you are correct in the fact that like he is off to a phenomenal start on the season, no doubt about it. There was what was the other thing?
Well, again, Pato O'Ward, it's like pissed off teenager at great times, taking his anger out on his buddies a little bit.
I would agree that O'Ward, he is incredibly talented, but he is, and I don't think this is going to be the case. We talked about this yesterday, though. At some point, you have to make a choice whether you're going to be the guy that's your deal, or that you learn how to reel it in a little bit before you become Thomas Schechter, who's a guy that like people loved and was excitable, but never finished races. And that's kind of where he is, right? I mean,
was it Tim Cindric last Monday with us, Checker or Wreckers?
Yeah.
It almost seems a little bit with Pato O'Ward this year if you look at his finishes throughout the year. Yesterday, it was on the wreck side of it. So a whole lot of caution laps in the Detroit race yesterday. I think about a third of the race under caution, but Alex Palou, 6th career win, and I would say I probably speak for Jake, and a much-needed week off for not only Jake, but the IndyCar Series before they head up to Road America coming up here in a couple of weeks. You guys have a good weekend? I guess Jake, certainly busy from a radio standpoint, but good besides that?
I'm trying to think of what I did. Yesterday was, you guys hear the ads on this radio station for Love Heating and Air.
Sure. They came out to the house, did an outstanding job at the Bowen household.
Same here.
Chris and John Love are twins. They're the fourth generation of that business. But it was May 31st is their birthday. But yesterday we celebrated their 50th birthday.
Nice.
And it was super cool because we grew up, the Love's house was our epicenter. I mean, we spent the night all the time. I can't even tell you how many nights in middle school in particular that we spent the night there, played basketball in their driveway every day after school. I mean, that was our place. And their mom still lives there. And so they had a 50th birthday party for the two of them.
Knockout and horse.
And that's right. Well, so apparently Susie Love, their mom, was talking about doing it at a restaurant or whatever else, and their sister Ellen was like, "Mom, you've got to do it at home," because like all of these boys, that was their place. So it was great. I mean, we got together yesterday, celebrated Chris and John, and then just sat around. Eric Barrett and Chris West of bingo cards galore here. Rob Whitaker, Jim Burge. We just sat around telling old stories about when we were knuckleheads. It was great. Great fun.
I was waiting for you to go ding, ding, ding on those names early on.
Next door
well,
to
I was trying to
Farkas.
keep track. I have to follow my bingo card.
Yeah,
They live next
Looking
door to
pretty
Farkas,
good
just
so
you
far.
know.
It's one of those fill the card times.
Byron was a no-show, by the way.
Well,
We still got mentioned, though.
tension
still
in
counts.
the North Central friendship
That's
group
right.
there.
That's
Mark,
right.
how many Indians games? 3?
None. No, we went to
Sweep by the Indians, by the way, over at Toledo.
We
Weekend sweep.
went to Illinois for the first time since Mother's Day weekend, helping my parents out with some stuff and all that. So enjoyed some family and fun. Saw the cousins for my daughters and stuff, and then put a grill together yesterday when I got back in town. So
Good for you.
Yeah.
It's a nice little Sunday.
Which of the two of us spends fewer number of weekends in Indianapolis, me or you?
I'd say you, I think.
Ooh, I don't know, man.
I've been back since Mother's Day, so it's been a while.
Kev, what'd you do?
I actually had you dialed up yesterday driving home. We were up at Maddie's family's lake house. They have a lake house up in Leesburg, Indiana. You familiar at all with Leesburg?
Where is Leesburg?
Just a little northeast of Warsaw.
Okay.
So yeah, we had a couple of Maddie's good friends come up there, and 7 little kids in all. So it was certainly a lot of eyes on those kids, but they had a blast up there. I mean, Saturday was hotter than you know what, so it was great to get in the water a little bit and have some fun up there. But yeah, we left probably, lap 15, 20, and you guys signed off at 86 Meridian for me.
It felt like a long race.
Well, the 30 cautions. I mean, 30 yellow laps.
Yeah.
But again, I said to Matt, Matty was sound asleep. Once we hit Westfield, I am so happy that race just got me through this entire drive home. It's one of those just 2 hours and 20 minutes, and you're like an hour off US 31. It's just not like the cleanest of drives. So it was great to listen to you guys. Outstanding job per usual with your crew, and like I said, I'm sure you are very much looking forward to a weekend off.
That's a fair statement, yes. a fair statement.
Speaking of weekends, we will certainly have a game next weekend in the NBA Finals. We'll actually have a game a week from tonight. That will be Game 5, and the reason for that is we are tied up at 1-1. Jake, you were just a game off in your Heat prediction.
I'm telling you, man, you just can't. You can't rule these guys out. I mean,
they are the weed in the yard. They are the weed in the yard that I thought I've killed 17 times.
Undoubtedly,
and it's still there.
And I told you, like, it was. Last night was such the typical Miami Heat win. I mean, I've watched a lot of Heat basketball, and I'm telling you, like, they just kind of hang around, and then late third they draw close, early fourth they get like a 3 to 5 point lead, and you think to yourself, like, okay, I mean, they got a little bump here, and then all of a sudden it's 7 to 9 point lead. And then there's like 3 minutes to go, and it's an 11 to 13 point lead. And you're like, what in the world just happened?
Yeah, I was talking with one of our friends' husbands who was up with us over the weekend, and he was a college basketball player, and both of us were just kind of like, for Miami to get back into it, Butler's got to do heroic stuff. Butler's got to have a 45-point game or just something crazy. And last night, I mean, he had 21 points and 9 assists. I don't want to act like it was a poor game, but it wasn't crazy Jimmy Butler. And yet, the confidence those undrafted guys continue to have away from home in the finals. Max Strus couldn't throw it in the Colorado River in Game 1. He comes out. He really set the tone, I thought, in the first quarter when they built that early lead. Denver's bench played great there into the second. But then Duncan Robinson in the fourth, Gabe Vincent all night long. It's quite impressive to see these unheralded resumes, no matter the stage, no matter how ugly Game 1 was for them, continue to bounce back, show that resiliency. 17 threes for Miami last night. Saw they shot 68% in the fourth quarter. ESPN threw up a graphic. I think it was the third best fourth quarter in NBA playoff history for any team. Because they were down. I mean, if you watch the second and third quarter, hell, if you fell asleep in the third quarter, you probably thought, oh, Denver's got this. But Miami, terrific in the fourth quarter. Nikola Jokic had 41. Kind of an interesting stat. Denver is now 0-3 here in the postseason when Jokic scores over 40.
Isn't that bizarre? I mean, if you're Denver, are you worried about the fact that you got that kind of performance from him and still couldn't parlay that?
Well, I thought Mark Jackson made a really good point in Game 1, and I think you could say the same thing last night. Denver is at its best when Jokic is facilitating first, scoring second. Because when he's facilitating, he obviously is finding guys for super high percentage looks. They are playing well. Naturally, the opponent's kind of sagging off him. And then when he needs to score, like he did in Game 1 to close that game out, boom, he can do that for you. But Michael Porter Jr. really struggled for them last night. First home loss of the playoffs for Denver. Their first loss at home, I think, since late March. So 1-1 in that series, 111-108. Jamal Murray missed one. Lights try and force it into OT. A little bit of a break as they travel now to South Beach. Game 3 will come on Wednesday night of that series.
Did you see Eric Spoelstra after the game was asked, and I thought it was a pretty fair question, hey, are you guys by design trying to turn Jokic into a scorer as opposed to a facilitator? And Spoelstra's like, he was like offended by the question. But it's a pretty good question, right? Because I think that there's a lot of accuracy to that. You let Jokic get his 40, then you know where the damage is coming.
He only had 4 assists. And
right.
Again, I mean, he had 41, but this is a guy that we saw in Game 1, whatever he had, 27 and 14. I mean, I think Denver would like to kind of play through him more as a passer. Obviously, he's an incredibly gifted scorer as well, but I think that's a great question. I think it's a question that Spoelstra probably reacted to that because he doesn't want to give his honest answer.
You ever see a tweet that you think to yourself, that is a brilliant observation, and then you get mad that you didn't make it, and then you look and it's just some guy with like 50 followers.
17 numbers on his Twitter name.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't necessarily that. It was a writer of some sort, but a fairly modest account, but had a great tweet that just said, Nikola Jokic, I've heard his name said a couple of different times, by the way, but Jokic, and then just said, Greg Ostertag, but Larry Bird.
He does look like Ostertag.
And I'm like, that is perfect.
I used to love Ostertag.
That is literally the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Greg Ostertag, but Larry Bird.
I thought it was kind of wild. Mike Breen said last night that Jokic's favorite player growing up was Tracy McGrady.
I'm amazed how many people. I'm either old or I slept through the latter half of the 90s. I never thought of Tracy McGrady as like in the same stratosphere as like Kobe, Garnett.
I think he had that brief run where it was at that level, like a little bit of Raptors, a little bit of Magic. It didn't last very long, but it was really impressive. And what Breen said last night, which I think kind of plays into it, is what's Tracy McGrady, 6'8", 6'9",
yeah,
something like that. What impressed Jokic was a dude that tall that was that skilled.
Okay, better career or better player, Tracy McGrady or Anthony Hardaway?
Probably Penny, but would you say more long? I don't know.
I mean, I just think of McGrady.
I feel like McGrady's stint was like 4 or 5 years.
So was McGrady the Terrell Davis of the NBA?
Yeah, but it's hard to. Yeah, it's hard to go there. I mean, he didn't win a title.
Yeah, I mean, or just like a guy that was a dynamic, holy cow player is McGrady the Michael Vick of the NBA?
Yeah, that's probably a little bit better. Kind of a unique guy. Obviously scored it at an absurdly high level there for a couple years, mostly on, poor teams. But, it was kind of Vince Carter's sidekick, and then, he goes to Orlando, takes off, and obviously things didn't work out. Houston eventually kind of went south for him there, but that was just a name I did not expect Mike Breen to say when he said Jokic's favorite player was Tracy McGrady. Trace Jackson Davis over at the Pacers facility today. Workout time. You see he's working out with that dude from Arizona?
That dude from Arizona.
Sabonis-like dude. Tabellis. He kind of whipped IU back in the media in Vegas. I found that ironic that was the guy that will be among the handful of workout, whatever you want to call it, comrades, if you will, for Trace Jackson Davis today.
Now, are they working out in tandem?
Yeah, it's a group. It's 5 or 6 of them. So, not the solo workout like we saw with Cam Whitmore from Villanova last week, but Trace Jackson Davis, who I think has done a few Western Conference teams working out. Again, the draft's 2 weeks from Thursday. And when you see him working out for the Pacers, first off, Trace Jackson Davis obviously is worthy of a workout. There's no questions asked there. Last week the Pacers kind of had that local flavor to their workout. You look at picks 26, 29, 32. Indiana holds all 3 of them. Isn't that squarely in Trace Jackson Davis' range?
Yeah, I think Jackson Davis is on their radar. I don't know that I would say that he's on their dartboard just yet, but I think he's on their radar. I think they're going to take a look at him.
Are they done with Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith? Is that too harsh?
Are they done with Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith?
Because isn't that like that sort of position?
The answer is likely or possibly yes, but
both under contract
in this capacity. Are they done with Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith? They may be done with the thought of that as a pair and try to parlay or move on from one of those two. I don't know which it would be, quite honestly. I do feel like Jalen Smith kind of fell out of rotation. And, Isaiah Jackson, I think just his...
Hell, Isaiah Jackson's probably younger than Trace Jackson Davis.
That's it. I mean, Isaiah Jackson's athleticism plus age, I do think that they're still very intrigued by him. I mean, he does do unique things. He's like Tracy McGrady, not literally, but I'm saying in the fact that you look at him and you go, he just does things at that size that we're not used to. So
many positives to the Pacers this last season, so many. If you're going to throw out a negative individually, it's those two. And that neither of them took a step forward. You were hoping.
But neither one sees that position, right?
Right. And I just think life behind Miles Turner is a little bit up in the air. Daniel Tice is still under contract. What's kind of his, he pretty much, they kind of sat him towards the end of the season. Trace Jackson Davis working out today for the Pacers. Blinds are closed. That means it's a glorious day.
That's right.
absolutely beautiful here in Indianapolis. Joel A. Erickson going to join us coming up at 8:30. Was out at the Colts complex on Friday to get the second look at them this spring. It was Gardner Minshew taking the starting reps for the Colts. They will also have, I would say, a pretty big twist to training camp this year. We'll explain more on that here coming up a little bit later in the show. And will we see a free agent wideout join the Colts? A former first-round pick join the Colts. We'll explain that coming up a little bit later as well. Good Monday morning to you. Hope you have a good start to this week. It is Kevin and Query right here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
1-1 in the NBA Finals. Last night, the Miami Heat. Great start and great finish to the game for the Heat. Their undrafted dudes were terrific. Jimmy Butler, pretty solid as well. 111-108 winners, and it sounded like this, giving Denver their first home playoff loss.
Outside Martin, back up top Butler. Butler, a three-pointer. Off the side of the rim, Brown the rebound. Could the Heat foul here?
I'm taking a foul, not allowing them to get off a three.
Denver does have a timeout, but they're not using it. 4 seconds. Murray, step back, three-pointer. Won't go. Fight for the rebound, Martin, and it's over. The Miami Heat have tied the NBA Finals. What a comeback here on the road for the Heat, and it's one apiece.
Thing is, Murray got a good look.
Yeah, Nothing like that road silence you're able to create there. You haven't heard it all playoff long. 1-1, Game 3 coming up Wednesday night in Miami. Again, it is a 2-2-1-1-1 format. So just 2 games in Miami before back to Denver, and we will at least have a Game 5 in the series.
Major League Baseball yesterday. Pirates over the Cardinals 2-1. It was the Brew Crew over Cincinnati 5-1. Cubs did get a win. They beat the Padres 7-1. Braves over Marks Diamondbacks 8-5 in our battle for PBR. Looking to see where the Athletics were yesterday. Did they play?
You can venture to guess what they did.
Shocking that you're looking for them. Seems like a waste of time.
Cute fella over the Giants 8-3. Just continue to flap away from those Diamondbacks,
I know.
don't they?
I'm more mad. Usually, I'll check scores now, and I'm not as mad about the Cubs losing as I am when the Diamondbacks lose and the Orioles win. I'm like, come on! Let's go here.
White
Really want
Sox
that
over the
six-pack.
Tigers 6-2. Yeah, well, hey. And the Indianapolis Indians 7-0 over the Toledo Mud Hens. 1 run for every beer bat Mark Dykton's had out there, right?
Man, I need a beer bat.
How about this? Perfect weather this week with the Storm Chasers coming in town
Well, that must disappoint them.
for Victory Field. Speaking of
What are we doing here?
Speaking of baseball, shout out to the Fighting JMVers, or the Fighting Brad Bowens, product of Indiana State. That would be my father. Indiana State, moving on. They win their regional, some high-scoring games. They beat Iowa last night to advance out of the Terre Haute Regional, so they will await the winner of TCU and Arkansas. If they win that, which will be a best 2 out of 3 series, then they punch their ticket to Omaha for the first time since 1986. And Jake, tonight, the Indiana Hoosiers will have their opportunity. They actually had an opportunity last night to do it. Kentucky drilled them, though, 16-6. That was a must-win game for the Wildcats there. So one more night in the dorms in Lexington.
And for Indiana State, it has to do with what happens around them in terms of where they go next, right?
Yeah, so either TCU or Arkansas. Arkansas is the better seeded team, so they would go to Fayetteville, I think, for that one. For Indiana, again, it's a 6 o'clock first pitch tonight from Lexington. If they were to advance, I believe it's LSU and Oregon State. Oregon State, I feel like they've always been good at baseball in like the last 15 years.
I like the Beavs, man. I like
Corvallis.
I've been there, baby. Yesterday in Detroit, Chevrolet Detroit Grand Prix. Winner Alex Palou over Will Power and Felix Rosenquist, finishing in third. Kind of, I wouldn't say a crash fest by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely some cautions. And Romain Grosjean was probably the one person who was most victimized by it that looks back and beats himself up because he was running up towards the front and then simply lost it and was very upset.
Graham Rahal wrecking on a caution lap?
Yeah, Rahal's steering went out, it looked like, and then Benjamin Peterson came up and all of a sudden just
felt sorry for him and said, I'll just join the party.
Yeah, just rear-ended him. Give me a number. Well, we'll do this for NASCAR. Kyle Busch, the winner of NASCAR. Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano ran out the top 3.
21.
Number 21 for Kevin Bowen. You have won a lifetime supply, courtesy of Corey LaJoy of Napa Auto Parts.
Oh, perfect.
That's good.
Mark?
Yeah.
11.
Number 11 for Mark. That is Christopher Bell. You've won a lifetime supply of DeWalt Construction Technology.
All right.
Didn't Alexander Rossi used to be at Napa?
He was.
Yeah.
For me,
22.
Number 22 for me. Ross Chastain. I've won. Oh, Moose Fraternity. The Moose Fraternity.
Sounds right up your
Chevrolet.
alley.
Is that a hair product?
What exactly is Moose Fraternity? Do
Let's
we know?
find out.
Can you look that up, Mark?
Is it MOOSE?
Yeah.
Some major parties there.
What do we do on this program, Mark?
We educate and entertain.
Thank you. Yeah. Do I get to wear the little moose hat and then go to the lodge? Do I get to hang out at the lodge? I guarantee they drink PBR at the Moose Fraternity Lodge, right?
I mean, Yeah, the first thing that pops up is Loyal Order of Moose.
Yeah.
In Beech Grove.
Yeah.
That can't be it.
That's it. No, that's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
So you're a member of Beech Grove's Moose Club?
Isn't there the Antelope Club up here in Delaware?
I think Mike Chappell actually just got reelected for his third term of the president down there in Beech Grove.
Oh, here it is. It's a charity organization.
Yeah.
Looks like the International Organization of Men and Women dedicated to caring for young and old, bringing communities closer together and celebrating life.
Well, that
Look at
absolutely typifies me.
Look at that. Thank you, Mike Chappell, for your service on that end.
That's right.
The Fever, I think, had an entertaining loss, if we were going to describe it in that manner. They lost the Aces yesterday. Very close game. That's a defending champ, the Aces at home, 84-80 as the Fever. I think 1-3 now on the season. All right, Joel Erickson going to join us here in about an hour.
I hate to tell you they're 1-4.
1-4 now. On the other side of this break are the Colts pursuing a free agent wideout. We'll chat about that. Again, their open OTA session over the weekend. I guess that was Friday afternoon. Gardner Minshew taking a whole lot of starting reps. What does that mean? We'll explain more on the other side. Kevin and Query here, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
To Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
17 minutes before the hour of 8 o'clock on a Monday. Good morning to you. Good-looking start to the day. My name is Jay Query. Kevin Bowen here as well. Mark Dykton, man in controls for us as we talk about the Colts and their OTAs and whether or not it's going to be Anthony Richardson or Gardner Minshew that is under center week one. There's a ton that goes in between now and then. But question is, Kevin, is it possible that Chris Ballard is working his Rolodex to find another target for whoever it is that is going to be under center to throw to?
We talked last week, Jake, about how June 1st can be a date and a time where all of a sudden you see a few veteran signings around the NFL. The Colts made one last week at defensive end, and then Adam Schefter had this on Friday afternoon that the Colts worked out free agent wideout Breshad Perriman and are in discussions with him about signing there. So nothing yet since that tweet out on Friday afternoon. Obviously, anytime a guy of Adam Schefter's notoriety tweets something like that, you certainly take note of it. Perriman is a guy that is a former first-round pick, and I have long said you always look into kick the tires on former first-round picks. The thing about him, at age 29 now, he has never sniffed first-round pick production whatsoever. Frankly, he hasn't even sniffed second, third, arguably fourth-round production. 36 catches is the most he's ever had in a season. Bounced around to a handful of teams. Probably his best attribute has been as a big play wideout. He has averaged 16 yards per catch in his career, which is a pretty good number. But more than anything to me, Jake, adding a veteran pass catcher, sure, something I can get behind. But when you look at his resume, again, at the age of 29, to me it's June scraps. When you wait until June, this is pretty much what the market looks like.
It definitely made me think, and I mean, Bowen, every time I freaking read or listen to Bowen, it's like a constant freaking barrage of wideouts.
It's the laughter, right? It's the
haunted house, the Westfield haunted house he could star in.
After a while, don't you look at a guy? Sometimes you just need bodies, maybe. How many teams would you like to guess are on the resume, Kevin?
It's at least 5, right? 5 or 6.
Name them.
Ooh, boy, Jets, Ravens, Bucks.
Chargers.
No Chargers.
Jets, Ravens, Bucks. Did he play for the Bears? I didn't think he did.
Bears, not one of them.
No, I thought he did.
Ravens, Browns, Bucks, Jets, back to the Bucks. You would have to assume all of those, excluding obviously Baltimore. It was thought of, hey, this is the play. Maybe we can reinvent it a little bit here. Let's see what we have. And then,
first round pick out of Central Florida in 2015.
Yeah.
But Jake, it's not like any of those stops. He had a 55 catch, 820 yard season. None of it has again sniffed the first round sort of potential. But when you look at the Colts wideout room, I mean, I guess Isaiah McKenzie is the most veteran of the group. Michael Pittman, who was sitting out Friday due to a hip injury, he would be the most tenured Colt of the wideout group. So it is a pretty youthful room outside of Isaiah McKenzie. Pittman, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, who's been a little banged up as well, Ashton Doolin. That's probably what you're looking at from a wideout standpoint. I think one disappointing aspect of this OTA has been, Pittman was out for the birth of his child a couple weeks ago, out with a hip injury this week. The tight end group, no Jelani Woods, he's been banged up. The rookie Will Mallory out of Miami. As well, Drew Ogletree, who was kind of a darling of training camp last year before he tore his ACL. He obviously is still rehabbing that. So from a pass-catching standpoint, whether it's Gardner Minshew or Anthony Richardson, it's been a bit quiet there. Jake, when we were out there on Friday, Gardner Minshew took all the starting reps. You make anything of that?
No.
Different from how we saw it the
I think that may be the case for quite a while. But let me ask you this.
The first week we saw a split. The second week we saw Minshew take.
Everyone asked me this. So I'm going to ask you because you were there, I was not. How did Anthony Richardson look?
I thought he had a nice day. Again, I was just selfishly, probably more than anything, a little disappointed we didn't get to see him in starting reps. We're only able to go out there one day a week right now. This week it'll be Wednesday. Next week we do get to watch the entire mini camp to conclude the offseason program. So, there could easily be other practices where Richardson's taking more of the starting reps. Anthony had a really nice 2-minute drill to end practice. Pretty efficient, quick rhythm, got his team in field goal range. I think the backup kicker actually shanked one, but that was the best session from him. Outside of that, though, it was pretty nondescript. It is amazing, though, Jake. Like, I was sitting there on the sideline, and we are only allowed to take pictures of, like, a small period to start practice. And it got to the point where I knew that period was about to come to an end, and I hadn't, like, posted anything Richardson related. I'm like, oh, I should probably post something on Richardson just to, like, give people a little idea of, like, hey, I'm actually, here, and here's a glimpse of Anthony Richardson. So they were doing this little, like, scramble drill where you're kind of doing, like, high knees over some pads and an assistant's flushing you out of the pocket and you got to throw on the run, and they have a net set up with a little bit of a window in the net, and you got to throw on the run, and the goal is to try and get it in that window. So Richardson goes through the drill, rolls to his right, which I seem to remember when we had his quarterbacks coach Will Hewlett on after the draft, he did say kind of rolling to his right was something that they were working on and making throws. Throws a great ball right in the window. Gardner Minshew goes nuts. Richardson goes nuts. Quarterbacks are celebrating. And tweeting out that video and seeing how it literally was the only video that I took all practice. Like, he did it to the left side the next time and missed the window. It happened to be the one time that I filmed him. It is wild how much the Anthony Richardson content just blows up. People are obsessed, enamored with it. They can't get enough of it. It's unlike anything I've seen with a Colts quarterback in years. And obviously the early Andrew Luck years, Twitter was still kind of in its infancy. But people are, like, the reaction, Jake, in this market, if they would have taken Will Levis versus Anthony Richardson, it seems like those are at two ends of the spectrum.
I think I think part of it is because he is literally the shiny new toy. Because we have not seen enough body of work of him.
But wouldn't Levis
college.
be the shiny new toy?
But no, because the shine wore off of him in college. I don't mean because of what I'm saying is Richardson. There are people at the University of Florida that are still intrigued by Richardson because we just didn't see enough of them.
So it's more of the unknown.
Correct. It's the high risk, high reward, you know what I mean? But yes, it's the fact that I think people just are, everyone is intrigued by this. I mean, let's face it, he's, in terms of a quarterback, he is a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah.
He's bigger than what we're used to seeing.
He's a created player on a video game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought, again, I'll note every time I'm out there how the quarterback reps are split up because it's my job, and obviously we'll provide context on it from then. I did think it was interesting that Minshew split the reps with Richardson the previous week, and then he took all of them on Friday. We'll see how that plays out the rest of the spring. I'm also interested to see, at what point in camp do you feel like you need to decide, all right, one guy's going to get the bulk, and he's going to get the bulk for 3 or 4 straight days. And if he, excels in those periods, we're going to continue to have him be quarterback one. We have not seen a training camp schedule announced just yet, but the Colts will do something differently under Shane Steichen than they've previously done. They are going to have 2 separate joint practice sessions. So we knew about the one with the Bears. The Bears play the Colts at Lucas Oil Stadium on August 19th. That's a Saturday night. It's week 2 of the preseason. Remember, there's only 3 preseason games now moving forward. So typically, what the Colts have done is they would then host that team for joint practices at Grand Park the Wednesday and Thursday before a Saturday game. So, again, no camp schedule announced yet. If I were guessing, I would pencil in August 16th and 17th for those that would like to see that as the joint practices for the Bears. The next week, The Colts play on August 24th, which is a Thursday. That is in Philadelphia. That is their final preseason game. Shane Steichen's taking the boys to Philly early. I don't know if the Liberty Bell Tour will be on the docket, but they will have a joint practice on the road August 22nd with the Eagles. Certainly plenty of familiarity with the Bears and Matt Eberflus, and obviously Shane Steichen and the Eagles, so it makes sense. You play them that Thursday night. That checks the box. I am a bit curious, Jake, when the training camp schedule gets announced. Last year, I want to say it extended to like August 25th, 26th. Like they had some practices pretty late into the month. If you're going to Philly on August 21st, I guess it would be, they might end camp a little bit earlier this year. So I know some people enjoy going out there. It's free. I think it's a great time. It's great access. You sit very close.
Catch it while you can.
Yeah. I don't know that for sure, but they certainly will be gone for a chunk of August there in the mid to late parts. So with kids going back to school seemingly earlier every year, late July, early August, I think are your opportunities to catch the Colts.
Let me run past for you a few numbers, and you tell me if you'd take this. This is same quarterback, 2 seasons. You ready? A completion percentage of 58.7, and then the next year a completion percentage of 56.5, 29 total touchdowns, 23 interceptions, a quarterback rating of a 70.4 the first year and 80.1 the second year. Both seasons 8-8. Now, would you say that that's for a young quarterback about what you would hope for when a quarterback is first getting groomed, if you will?
I think individually you'd hope for a little bit more. My guess is, and I could be wrong, are those Josh Allen's numbers?
Those are years 3 and 4 of Steve McNair.
Oh, wow. You're going way back.
And I think McNair is similar to Anthony Richardson, not because they are both black quarterbacks. I understand that there's a natural, probably unfair bias that takes place either side. I mean, in sports, we tend to rate players sometimes just based on who they look like. But McNair, I think, was an equally intriguing player because when he came in, it was like, well, he's super durable. I've never seen a guy that can run and throw like him. He's built like, he's just this big, strong guy. And they were patient with him. I mean, the Oilers/Titans were patient with McNair, and eventually, obviously, he developed into an MVP-level player and a great player in the NFL. But it took time. Did not happen overnight. And I think with Richardson, there's a little bit of a danger that people are expecting to plug him in and immediately have him be, and that's, a lot of that is 25 years later, the way quarterbacks are thought to be able to produce right away as opposed to back then when literally, if you look at it, they gave him 4 years to get on track. Did the Colts have 4 years to wait on Richardson? This is a day where, in an age where we expect 4 games for a quarterback to be going.
Yeah, I mean, you don't draft him if you aren't going to be willing to practice a little bit of patience and also commit to him to grow. And I think teams are afraid of committing to young quarterbacks knowing that it could look ugly. And I'll give Mark's Bears credit. They have committed to playing Justin Fields when they know there's going to be some major growing pains on the field. And I will say this a lot between now and September, whatever the first game is, 10th, 11th, 12th. This season for me ain't about 8-9 or 7-10, whatever. It is all about Richardson's development. It's the Pacers of last year. No one cares about 35 wins for the Pacers. They care that Halliburton became an all-star and Benedict Mathurin looks like he can play in the NBA. And Miles Turner, I guess you got an answer there. So 3 bonuses on that end. This season for the Colts, all about Richardson. And you've got to make sure that you commit to his on-field development. And for me, that means playing him. And when that happens, how that happens, we'll continue to monitor. But again, as of Friday, it's just one day. Gardner Minshew taking the reps. A couple of injury notes. Still no Shaquille Leonard. I'm not expecting him until the start of camp. I don't look at it as like DEF CON. I look at it as this is kind of one final chance. And give him 6 more weeks of rest instead of rushing him like they did last year. So it's a huge storyline. We'll obviously monitor it at Grand Park. And Jake, your favorite guy, Rigoberto Sanchez, coming back from the Achilles, doing some punting.
Heck yeah,
still not
I'm telling you,
full go on that end.
I like Rigoberto Sanchez.
I like him a lot.
Have you already penciled him in on your top 10 indispensable Colts of
I was right.
2023? I'm saying for this year, is he going to make the list again?
We'll have to wait till the roster is complete.
Okay.
The man tore his Achilles running sprints. It's never an ideal thing.
Well, listen, strange things happen when you least expect. How many times do you see a wide receiver just go out to the lineup with nobody around him, boom, fall over? Come on now.
Possibly Zaire Franklin going to join us on the show tomorrow, so we'll keep you posted on a time on that. And Joel A. Erickson going to join us coming up at 8:30. Quite the name for the Pacers working out today from a local angle. We'll chat about that coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. Kevin Bowen, Jay Quarry, Mark Dykton here on a beautiful Monday.
on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
So, Kevin, the Pacers have how many picks coming up in the draft? They have 17 picks, right?
They've got 4 in the first 32, 7, 26, 29, and 32. And for Trace Jackson Davis, in his workout today, that 26, 29, 32 range seems to be right around where he's been mentioned most, right?
Yeah, I think he's intriguing to them.
Is the question more of do they actually pick in that area? Or how many of those 3 picks do they make in that area? I don't want to see them make many of them. I'm more in the high-end quality over quantity.
Here's the conundrum with Trace Jackson Davis. I'm going to go back to something I mentioned to you a long time ago, but I was a huge IU basketball fan, and I loved Steve Alford. I had a paper route. I was an honor carrier, thank you very much, for the Indianapolis News. And Don Bell was one of the guys on my paper route.
Make sure that's on the LinkedIn when you update that next.
That's right. And I still have the bag, by the way, the newspaper bag. Carried the papers in. And I remember Don Bell was a Purdue fan. And I said to him, so did you read the article yesterday about Steve Alford? And he said, no. And I said, Steve Alford is getting ready for the NBA draft. He's going to be a first-round pick, and he's shooting 500 free throws a day. And Don Bell said, he's like a 94% free throw shooter. Why doesn't he practice other stuff? I remember thinking, like, that's actually a pretty good point. Because it's not his free throw shooting that is the question mark as to whether or not he can play in the NBA. It's, in Trace Jackson Davis's case, I totally understand the fact that he's been shooting three-pointers to show that he can shoot from the outside, and that is, in particular, an area that is thought of. It's like, hey, man, I know that you're a 6'9" guy, but in the NBA level, 6'9" means you got to be able to stretch and shoot the ball and stretch the floor. And he wants to be able to show he can do that. I think if there's something that holds him back or offsets that, it is still the fact, Kevin, that Jackson Davis's lateral quickness is still going to be seen by teams as a defensive liability. Because if he is at 6'9", and I do think that situationally he can be a really good player in the NBA, and I do think that somewhere around late 20s, early 30s is where he probably slots. And I think he could be a very good NBA player situationally. I don't see him being like a Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, is he Jeff Green and Cody Zeller if we're watching the NBA Finals?
Yeah, I think he's, or
I mean, Cody Zeller's turned into Birdman.
Yeah, I think here's the thing: who does he guard?
I think laterally, Jake, I think he can be okay. Again, I mean, he's 6'9".
I don't think he has the lateral first step quickness though to stop anybody from driving around him.
Yeah,
the wing.
But when he's on the floor, he's probably going to be his team's biggest or second biggest player. So you would like to think he's not guarding Benedict Mathurin.
But what I'm saying is, in that capacity, if that's the case, I don't disagree with you.
But can he guard Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith? That's who he's going up against. Can he guard Daniel Tice?
But if he's playing those guys in his role in those minutes on the floor as being the biggest guy on the floor, then his ability to shoot threes is irrelevant.
Well, I don't think it's irrelevant. I think it would be nice to have because, I mean, Jalen Smith has proven more than Isaiah Jackson that he can hit an open three, and I think that is a nice luxury to have. Again, I don't think it's an absolute must for him to find this 37% three-point shot. If he wants to play for a decade in the NBA, that would be very beneficial, certainly. But again, I don't think it's an outright must. I think he can definitely be an 8th or 9th guy for a team. I think a lot of it depends on kind of how you view, where you're drafting and him. That cutoff from end of the first round to early second, that's a lot of different mindsets from teams. And I know a lot of second-round picks get traded nowadays anyways. But, late first round, those teams are thinking, hey, we just need one more piece.
Now,
and, look at Denver last year. Christian Brown is now playing, pretty good minutes for them as that, rookie kind of 8th guy versus you get into the early second round. And if you've got a team that's picking in the top 5 of the first round, they're looking at it as a much longer process. So they might say, Oh, 23-year-old. I have no idea how old he is. 23-year-old Trace Jackson Davis. No, let's take a flyer. Let's try and find the next Jokic. Let's try and take some second rounder that has a huge boomer bust potential.
Okay, I am looking before me here at 4 mock drafts. I will allow you and Kevin to confer amongst one another to tell me which one you want me to open. That would be.
Did he call you Kevin?
I'm sorry, you and Mark.
Sure did.
I was looking at Mark when I said it. Bleacher Report, Sportskeeda, CBS Sports, and the Rookie Wire. You guys would like me to open which one?
Sportskeeda sounds a little risky.
Yeah, I mean, click on that one at your own risk.
I don't want to be associated with you when you click on that link.
Okay.
Stay clear of that one.
So we have Bleacher Report, CBS Sports, and the Rookie Wire.
Let's go with CBS Sports.
Sure.
CBS Sports. This is the 2023 NBA mock draft. Latest update. This is updated on June 3rd, so that's like 2 days ago, right? Mm-hmm. This particular draft, with the 7th pick in the 2023 NBA CBS Sports mock draft, the Indiana Pacers select Jarace Walker from the University of Houston. But in terms of scrolling down, Jalen Hood-Schifino seems to be like the biggest lock somewhere between 14 and 16. They have him going 14th to New Orleans. 16 to Utah is the other place where you constantly see his name.
I saw an ESPN mock had him going 9, which was easily the highest I've seen.
This does not have Trace Jackson Davis going in the first round. Now, you've got to go to the Bleacher Report to get to the second round. And when you do that, and they have the Pacers, by the way, talking about Bleacher Report, also taking Walker out of Houston. Would you be happy with that?
Yes, I would. I think he's a good fit. I know some people are worried maybe doesn't have as high of an offensive ceiling, but I think for what the Pacers need, he is exactly that type of kind of 4 guy that can guard a lot, rebound. Yes.
Hood-Schifino, they have 16. Which, again, that's right around the range in which you said you saw him as high as 9?
Yeah, ESPN had him at 9 last week.
With the 38th pick in the 2023 NBA mock draft from Bleacher Report, the Sacramento Kings, via the Indiana Pacers' original pick, select Trace Jackson Davis from the University of Indiana.
Even more ties.
That's right.
To the state for that Kings team. That would be a...
But I would think somewhere around there, like...
Yeah, and Trey Lyles is a free agent. I know stylistically they aren't necessarily the same player, but height-wise they'd be playing pretty similar positions. Shout out to Frank Vogel.
How about that, man?
I would think, judging by this hire, Frank Vogel has created a reputation around the league that stars love to play for him.
4th stop for him? Is that right?
Orlando, Indiana, LA, and Phoenix?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know it ended a little bit early in LA, so maybe just whatever. Over time, they decided enough was enough. But, I think LeBron has spoken pretty highly of Frank Vogel. And clearly, if you're Matt Ishbia and you're the new owner of Phoenix, I would think you would have some conversation with Kevin Durant and or Devin Booker about what you've heard from some of these coaching candidates. So, yeah, good for Vogel on that.
Do you know Frank Vogel's introduction to the general public via the game of basketball, his very first?
No, I don't think I do.
When Frank Vogel was I'm going to guess he was 13, he appeared on David Letterman's Stupid Human Tricks.
Really?
He looked like Ralph Macchio in The Karate Kid. He came out and walked on the, kind of on the balls of his feet, tippy-toed. And he came out and Letterman's like, Frank Vogel he was either from New Jersey or Connecticut. Pennsylvania, somewhere out east. He's like, now what do you do? And he managed to spin a basketball on the edge of his toothbrush while brushing his teeth.
Yes. Nothing screams future NBA head coach like that. I don't know Frank Vogel at all. Jake, it seems like a guy I'd like to have a beer with.
Yeah, I think a nice guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, okay. In the annals of Pacer head coaches, Larry Bird is a numero uno, number 1. That's off the board. Coaches that you'd most want to sit down and have a beer with.
Oh, slick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I have.
Come on now, baby.
Talked with Slick, necessarily not over beer, but I used to work at the golf course that Slick would play at, and he'd just hang out after the round, and he was terrific with it. Oh my gosh, I feel like he would stay till sundown. He was awesome. Yeah,
Yes.
easily on that end.
They've had our fair share, actually. Like
Carlisle would be interesting, but there'd be some moments I'd be like, dude, I just graduated with a normal degree in college. I'm not as brilliant as you are. I feel like he'd be too technical for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Carlisle's an interesting mind, for certain.
Will you explain the University of Indiana thing? I think a few people, every time that you say that, they're a little bit like, wait, what? Did he really say that?
Literally, it's like the joke that goes over the head of a lot of people. David Stern, for whatever reason, every time David Stern would, and there weren't a lot of them, but Brian Evans, Calvert Chaney, Alan Henderson, I think probably he wouldn't have done Isaiah, I don't think. But anytime an Indiana player was drafted, David Stern, for whatever reason, always said the University of Indiana. It drove me absolutely bonkers.
Again, among the group working out today with Trace Jackson Davis, I feel like I butcher his last name. Tabellis, I believe, is the kid from Arizona. If you guys remember that Indiana-Arizona game from earlier in the year out in Vegas, Trace, by all accounts, was dealing with a back injury at that time. Really struggled against him. 21-11 is what Tabellis had. 21 points. Trace just had 11-5 and fouled out in that game. So from a workout standpoint, those two going at it could be interesting. So we'll see what happens. 2.5 weeks away.
Isn't that crazy?
Frank Vogel. Frank, where are you? Hi, Frank. Nice to have you here.
How's he look, Mark?
You're going to knock every tooth out of your head doing this.
He's got every kid his age's haircut, which is parted in the middle.
He looks like Ralph Macchio in Karate Kid, right?
Uh-huh.
Good for Vogel. Yeah, I mean, Phoenix, I get that obviously there's a lot there that he's going to have to figure out, but certainly there's a lot to work with.
Phoenix, the Monty Williams situation is unique. What happened there?
It just seems like everyone has gone with the Larry Bird approach of after 3 or 4 years, the voice gets tired.
He's going to have to... I think the real trick for Phoenix is to get DeAndre Ayton to be totally in and night out, right? Because it just seems like that is a guy that seems to take plays and at times quarters and maybe even games off. Now, I think, does Phoenix still have Bismack Biyombo?
If they didn't, they're going to lose a fan in you.
I would have figured you'd be all over that. You didn't wait for him after the game this year in Indy?
He's my favorite player in the league. You know why, Mark?
His name is Bismack Biyombo.
That is correct, because his name is Bismack
Former
Biyombo.
top 10 pick, right?
Yes.
Safe to say he did not live up to that?
Congolese wonder. That was back when the trend. You remember that? There was 1 year in the draft where literally every single player, every other player, was some 19-year-old player from different player. All they had was a Zapruder film of them playing with a voice basketball.
All right, Fran Fraschilla back in to break down the international. He's 2 years away from being 2 years away.
That's right.
That's buy season tickets tomorrow. We
have a sweet VHS tape, and as soon as we find a VCR around here, we'll show you exactly what he looks like. There was a trend of that for a long time, and it made watching the draft a lot less enjoyable. There's no doubt about it.
All right, we're going to get this IU Kentucky game on somewhat mainstream TV tonight, or are we going to have to venture somewhere else to find it?
What would it be on ESPN? Is ESPN doing the
Yeah, but
right
are we
now?
going to have to go on ESPN Plus? Are we going to get SEC Network? Are we on ESPN 2? Don't you think IU Kentucky would be a decent TV draw, even baseball? I mean, I know it's not.
Yeah,
I think some fans would be like, "Oh, we're playing Kentucky tonight."
I'll tell you here shortly where it airs. You ready?
They were SEC Network when they beat them the other night. They were ESPN Plus last night.
It says ESPN Plus.
Again?
That's what it looks like.
6 o'clock first pitch from Lexington on that end. You guys see the IU second baseman who got suspended because
he broke out a prop on the field, right?
Because he brought the prop on the field. I mean, come on.
Rules are rules, man.
What are we doing?
Rules are rules.
Can we not get a warning?
Rules are rules.
Baseball just pisses me off sometimes, and obviously the athletics contribute.
Well, half these guys that are playing though, is there anything more tired anything more tired. Let me tell you something. I'm not saying any names. But it does kind of make me, I don't have kids, so maybe I'm not qualified. But I do see a lot of parents and it seems to be more evident in baseball than other sports. Basketball is the king of it, but first off, when did they start giving out rings for like 8-year-old baseball teams? Have you seen this new trend, this craze?
I have not, no.
Like,
I just remember getting a trophy.
Great.
Nice season, Kevin.
Like, unbelievable tournament for little Johnny's Pips team. They won the such and such, and all these like little 7-year-old future brats that are eventually going to grow up to steal handicap spots and not return their grocery card at the grocery store.
Seems rather harsh to
they're
group
all standing there like
future brats
with their fists like holding it out with these big huge like fake rings on. And they've all got on eye black, and they all suck. These kids all suck. Like, the parents think that they're like the next Don Mattingly, and they go out there and they're actually more like, they suck. But they have the eye black, and they've got like the stirrups pulled all the way up, and like a chain around, and then you're like, wait a minute, they're.
What do you think people think of your student ID picture at Kansas?
100%, no question. And guess what? You know what happened at Kansas? What? All of a sudden, I'm 50 at the Glendale Library taking a tutor for 9 hours to learn basic algebra. So, yes, there probably is a lesson to be learned. Thanks for illustrating that point perfectly.
Sounds like you need to be like a guest speaker at these like practices. Don't be like me.
What I need to say to these kids is, kids, let me inform you of something, and I hate to be the one to break this bad news to you.
Didn't we put that picture up, Night in the Fan Cave?
You know what 90% of professional sports athletes have in common? They're the sons of professional sports athletes. Sorry, but look up in the crowd there, and
hey, maybe one of them was Max Clark back in the day of Franklin. Now he's a top 5 pick.
I'm just saying.
Things that grind Jake Query's gears: Little League baseball and attendance numbers at the NFL draft.
I got news for you.
They're all going to be brats was quite the statement.
I got news for you, okay? People that are listening. I am all for. Last night, as I mentioned, I got together at Chris and John Love's house for their 50th birthday with the guys that I grew up with, and we had such a good time. I get it. I'm being a little facetious. But the one thing that I would beg people to be super cautious of, I understand that you as a parent, it is important, and you want to give your kid the best opportunity to be competitive or to be good at something or to chase their dreams and passions. But when it comes to youth sports, there is a dangerously thin line of fathers who are not allowing their kids to chase their dreams and passions, but rather forcing their kids to relive their failed ones. And if you have your sub-10-year-old kid in the middle of January in a batting cage indoors while you're videotaping it and then like breaking down analysis on the trajectory of their elbow during their swing, the odds are really high that by the time your kid's in 8th grade, he's going to look at you and go, look, man, I'm not near as good at this game as you think I am, and I don't like it near as much as you want me to, and I'm going to go play something different. I'm just telling you. I've seen it a billion times. I know that's a harsh reality for people, but it's a reality nonetheless.
I think there's probably 95 to 98% of parents that are not doing that, to be fair.
Yeah, I think that's...
it's like watching the fight at the AAU basketball game between the ref and the parent and not acknowledging the 1,000 other games that were played at that gym where all the parents behaved.
But, Kevin, it's...
Like, people, I think, nowadays just assume every parent is like that. Every parent's filming their kid. There are a lot of great parents out there that are letting their kids live their lives and enjoy those moments and all of that.
I think also you haven't entered into the age yet where you're seeing a lot of people who have kids that age, and you're going to be surprised how much more common. You're right. I'm speaking in hyperbole, but it is more common than. Well, first off, when it comes to parents storming the court and fighting an AAU basketball official, all it takes is one, right? Because then they cancel the whole thing. I do think it's far more common than you think.
Yeah, there's definitely parents. I'm not denying that whatsoever, but I think grouping everybody together. Oh, they're all going to be brats one day. Come on.
But what I'm saying is I think that the emphasis on youth sports and the year-long travel and the money going into it is far more compounded now than it was even 10 years ago, let alone 20.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I'm not saying that.
And it's like it's at the point now where, I think it overwhelms.
It's a huge commitment at a young age, certainly.
Right, and I think it burns kids out. And I think that more often than not, the kids that are burnt out, when you see it, it's not because of the travel rigors or whatever else. It's because the parents are so overzealous on seeing them compete. I think it is. You're right. I mean, obviously, I'm speaking in an unfair absolute, and I'm doing so sarcastically, but I think undeniably it is a far more common thing than you're giving it credit or discredit, whichever way you want to say it.
Joel Erickson from the Star going to join us in about 5 minutes. We'll chat Colts with him. Again, they had their open OTA session on Friday. A lot of first-team reps for Gardner Minshew. Could they be adding to the whiteout room coming up? We'll speak with Joel about that in a few. For now, let's begin with a 1-1 NBA Finals.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
It was a great start and a great finish for the Miami Heat last night, 111-108. They even it up with the Denver Nuggets. Jimmy Butler, 21-9, so pretty good. But, boy, those undrafted guys, for how bad Max Strus was in Game 1, he was huge, setting the tone early. Duncan Robinson, big in the fourth quarter. Gabe Vincent, kind of the Gabe Vincent we've seen all postseason long. Miami continues to just, boy, they're that weed in the yard that you think you've killed, and they just show up again and again. So 1-1 with this series shifting to Miami for Game 3. Nikola Jokic had 41 points, but Denver is now 0-3 this postseason when Jokic scores 40 or more. And for the first time in the playoffs, Denver's lost at home.
I'm telling you, the thing about Miami that is so dangerous, for lack of a better, they have so many different ways they can beat you. You know what I mean? They come down the floor and you're like, Gabe Vincent's not really going to hit a big shot here, right? And if it's not Gabe Vincent, it's Duncan Robinson. And if it's not Duncan Robinson, I mean, you know about Jimmy Butler, you know about Bam Adebayo. I guess the question, Kevin, would be for Denver, who's fabulous, no question. But if Jokic and Murray aren't on, then who's the guy that's going to step up? In Miami, there are just so many different guys that they know their role. They don't get outside of it. But when the ball comes their way, man, I mean, they all seem to be able to rise to a challenge. And they're fun. I mean, like I said, you can't rule out Spoelstra and just the heart of that team. Are they going to win the series? Maybe not, but impressive last night.
Early line on Game 3, Denver favored on the road by 2.5. Wednesday night, 8:30 tip for Game 3.
Major League Baseball yesterday. Pirates over the Cardinals 2-1. It was the Brewers over the Reds 5-1. Cubs over the Pods 7-1. Yankees over the Dodgers 4-1. Indianapolis Indians 7-0 winners over the Toledo Mud Hens. By the way, the Diamondbacks lost. Cute fellow won.
Jake.
Are the Athletics, were they just idle, Oakland?
No. That would have been better than another loss for them.
I don't think they played yesterday.
They
did
They
lose.
lost.
7-5 to the Marlins.
Indians won all 3 of their games over the weekend against Toledo. They are at home again this week if you're looking to head out to Victory Field. Jake, Detroit yesterday, Alex Pillow, pretty darn dominant like he's really been all season long.
Pillow, when he gets out into leads, I mean, he puts races away more than any other driver probably in that field once he gets out to a lead. And they knew in Detroit that was a narrow racetrack, not a lot of passing opportunities, so he did what the pole sitter should do. He jumped out, got to a lead, never really relinquished it. A couple of times, obviously, through pit cycles. But in the end, solid run for Will Power as well, by the way, who finished second, and Felix Rosenquist, who finished third. The one driver probably that would like to get things back would be Romain Grosjean, who finished 24th, was running up front, had a late incident that knocked him out of the race.
Pato O'Ward's emotions getting the best of him.
Yeah, Pato O'Ward, man, you're right. He's a little too jumpy in the cockpit. You know what I mean? And
be curious to see the next few races for him.
I mean, he's a mega talent.
A little bit more public with some of the stuff, a little bit more, certainly the accident at the 500, what happened yesterday, be something to watch. A lot of yellow laps yesterday on the first year in Detroit, but Alex Pillow gets his second win of the season. We mentioned earlier, College World Series. We're still, I guess, a full week away from that, but Indiana State is moving on. They win their regional in Terre Haute. They beat Iowa, North Carolina, Wright State with the 3 teams in the regional. The Sycamores, they are moving on. They will take on the winner of Arkansas or TCU. That game is today. And Indiana State will then play a best-of-3 series coming up this weekend against one of those 2 teams. If they win that, the Fighting JMVers are off to Omaha for the College World Series. Indiana will try and join them in the Super Regional round coming up tonight. That is a 6 o'clock first pitch
from Lexington. The Hoosiers had an opportunity last night to punch their ticket, but Kentucky beat them 16-6. It's a double elimination. That was IU's first loss. Kentucky already lost to Indiana earlier in the weekend, so these two teams will play for the third time coming up at 6 o'clock tonight. The winner, I think it's either LSU or Oregon State in that one. So basically, we've gone from 64, we're getting down to 16, and then 8 teams go to Omaha after this.
The Fighting JMVers.
Uh-huh.
Is that what they're going to be known as? I'm telling you, if Indiana State goes to Omaha, I'm buying Indiana State baseball hats for everybody here.
I'm telling you, JMV's got to do a show from there. What is it, 10 hours? 9 hours?
It's got to be 10 at least, right?
Is it?
Yeah. It's
in an hour. We got
you do gain hours. That means...
I'm trying to look for positives here.
Well, I guess he's afternoon, so it wouldn't be as big a deal. Like if we went there, we'd have to get up at 6. Or we'd be on there at 6 Omaha time. Probably not happening, right?
Fever almost beat the defending champs yesterday afternoon, but they lose. You said 1-4 now in the year for the Fever?
1-4 for the Fever. Yep.
Sound like a pretty entertaining loss, though, for those in the camp for the Fever of that rebuild. All right, let's talk some Colts with the other side. Joel A. Erickson from the Star joins us next.
Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
By the way, one quick thing before we get to Joel. Somebody did pass this along. Indiana basketball, when I was talking about Trace Jackson Davis, and I said that his question would be his lateral quickness. Indiana sent out a tweet. Trace Jackson Davis at the Combine, first standing vertical power, first in max vertical power, first in three-quarter court sprint speed, and first in shuttle run. And then it says, amongst all centers. Again, I don't deny he's going to be a good NBA player. What I'm saying is, if from what I've in talking to NBA scouts, their question for him is that they don't see him necessarily as a down low on the block center at his size, and he does have athleticism. They want to see if he can move side to side on the wing against 6'7" to 6'9" guys that are playing at, say, the 3 or the stretch 4. That's all I'm saying. And that would be the area that is to say totally doubted is wrong, but that's the area that they most want to examine and explore, and I would assume one of them that the Pacers will be looking at today.
Trace Jackson Davis back in his hometown, as Jake just mentioned there, working out over at the St. Vincent Center. I think it's draft workout 6 maybe for the Pacers here. 2.5 weeks away from the NBA draft. Switching gears to the Colts, Joel Erickson from the Star with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Joel, I want to go back to Friday afternoon, and before kind of getting your thoughts on the open OTA session that we got to watch, have you heard anything on the Adam Schefter news front and him reporting that the Colts worked out former first-round pick wideout Breshad Perriman and are in discussions about signing there? You heard anything on that front?
I have not been able to get anything on that front. I was out of town over the weekend though, and so I had other responsibilities.
You view veteran pass catcher, veteran wideout. It's been interesting to watch these first 2 OTAs because the wideout and tight end group are pretty banged up right now. You view that as something they should look into?
I think that bringing in a guy like Breshad Perriman it's helpful for competition. I don't know that it. I think that I would put him at this point in his career maybe more along the lines of like a little bit better version of Malik Turner or Juwan Winfrey or some of these other guys that they brought in. He's been, mostly a bit player, rotational player throughout his career, and so I think that despite the fact that he was a first round pick and he has the name and everything like that, he's probably more of a let's see what we have here, see if he makes the roster type of guy if they end up signing him.
Let me ask you, Joel, what I asked Kevin earlier, because everybody's asked me this, and so Kevin weighed in, so I'll get yours. Simple question: how did Anthony Richardson look? What do you say when people are like, "Well, how did he look? How's he look? What's he done well? What's he done poorly? Where does he look in comparison to other guys that would be just drafted quarterbacks, etc.?"
I think that what I've been telling people is he kind of looks like I would have expected him to look so far. I mean, there's a lot of good. You can see the power. You can see some really good stuff in the pocket. I mean, you also see some throws that get missed, and that probably need to be a little bit more automatic. But I don't know that I was expecting anything different. I think so far what we've seen out of Richardson on the practice field is pretty much what I was expecting from him at this stage.
Were you surprised at all? Again, Joel Erickson with us from the Star. Again, we're out there one day a week, and I try to preface that every time I explain, hey, these are the takeaways. I mean, we're watching one of the 3 or 4 OTA sessions each week. But were you surprised at all on Friday that Gardner Minshew took all the starting reps and we were out there?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. I thought for sure they would, give Richardson at least one of them, especially after, they kind of said everything the week before. I wonder though if Sycamore cares about how it might look. He doesn't really seem to be that kind of guy, and so I don't know. I'm with you. The hard part is you kind of make note of it, but we're not out there enough days in a row to know for sure.
Right. It'll be different during training camp.
And you asked, and the thing is, you did ask about it. Like we asked about it, and he kind of just deflected it to the side. But the outside of asking, it's hard when you don't have all 3 practices in a row. I mean, in a couple of weeks now, in mandatory minicamp, if Minshew takes all of them with the first team, then I think I'll be on a little bit more of an alert.
Yeah, we'll get 3 straight days then. Obviously, when training camp opens up in late July, we'll be out there for every practice. If you had to guess, and I don't know, it's probably a stupid question to even ask, it's June 5th. If you had to throw out a training camp date where you think we would start to see 4 straight days of this guy taking 80% of the starting reps, where is maybe your pivot date? Again, preseason games are the 12th, the 19th, and the 24th of August. So where would be kind of a date you would circle as something to watch for come training camp?
Maybe the 14th or so, right after that first game, especially with them going into joint practices the next 2 weeks after that.
Yeah.
Because when you do those joint practices, you're kind of testing out your you're testing out your roster, but in general, I guess it's a different head coach, so we'd have to see. But from my memory, I don't remember them messing with the lineup very much in those joint practices in the past. They kind of tend to put the first team with the first team and to see what they have. And so I think that 14th, 15th, whenever the Bears get here, I think maybe that's when I'd start taking real notice. Unless he's got all the first team snaps on the 7th or something.
Are we starting to see more of a trend? Let me rephrase that. I think we've already seen the start of this trend, but where does the trend, I guess, end? It seems to me that training camp now, and this probably is by a proper design, but the days of like everybody, the Junction Boys, right? Of like, it's 7 weeks of hell and double 2-a-days and da-da-da-da. And now, Kevin, as you were talking about, like it's getting even shorter and shorter where people maybe are going to be able to go out and see them at Grand Park and et cetera. I mean, are we starting to see, I'm not going to say the diminish of training camp, but the devalue of overdoing training camp? Does that make sense what I'm asking for either one of you guys?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing more than anything is that, back then, I think the 2-a-day Junction Boys, that kind of thing, that was rooted in the idea that they needed to get guys in shape. A lot of those stories reading the Junction Boys are about just pure brutal conditioning and stuff like that. And the expectation now is really more that you when you get there, you're in shape. Like I remember talking to DeForest Buckner last year, and Buckner he almost does a month-long mini camp of his own with his pass rush coach in the summer. And he said part of that is just that when he gets to camp, he's not doing any of that stuff. He's already in condition for the football moves he's making, and he gets a chance to just work on stuff. And I think that's part of it. I mean, the other part of it obviously is injuries. We've seen, countless training camp injuries over the last couple of years. But I think the biggest part of it, and why you can maybe not do the same way as you used to, is that these guys are sort of expected to be, not sort of, they're expected to come in shape and ready to go. Whereas I think a lot of that before was to beat it out of them, beat out the offseason out of them.
It's Joel Erickson from the Star. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. The open OTA session for the media will be Wednesday this week, then a 3-day minicamp next week. That will conclude the offseason program. Joel, we have not seen Shaquille Leonard on the practice field participating in either of the 2 sessions. My level of concern with that, I don't think has really changed much. I didn't expect to see him in the spring. I think the next big date would be if he all of a sudden opens up training camp on the physically unable to perform list, then that would be kind of rising in the red flag category for me. How do you view Leonard and his lack of participation right now since having that second back surgery in November?
I'm with you. I'm not super concerned about it right now. I think it's actually probably a good sign that just based on everything he said about what happened last year, he felt like he was on the field way before he should have been. He wasn't ready when he got out there. It contributed to him having to have a second surgery. There's not really necessarily a reason for him to be out there right now. You want a guy out there if they're healthy, but if you think about like some of the other guys that are not practicing right now, like they're taking no chances with Jonathan Taylor. who had surgery on a high ankle sprain, which is, in my mind, I think when like the Alabama guys always do the tightrope surgery on their high ankle sprain, and that's usually to play like in 3 weeks or something like that. Basically, the way NFL teams operate now is if you've got anything going on in the spring, they're going to hold you out. They're just going to make sure that you don't hurt anything any worse. And I know, I feel like every week when we tweet out like who we see or we don't see, people are like, "Oh man, we're in big trouble." I right now the list is not that much longer than it would be on a standard normal training camp day. I think it's pretty much the same. And again, the precaution of it, that's been a while now. I think people should kind of start getting used to the fact that teams, they're not going to take any chances with players during the practice session. It's during the games that they're more willing to let guys play through stuff. But they're not really doing that at any point in the offseason anymore. Even in training camp, they don't really do that.
Joel, if there was one position room that Chris Ballard, let's say hypothetically that the NFL institutes a rule that during training camp, the general manager can only analyze one position and focus in and watch tape and scrutinize one position. Which position would that be that Chris Ballard would choose because it's the one that he feels is the most intriguing to him and has the most question, aside from the obvious, which would be quarterback? But what position is it, do you think, that Chris Ballard is saying, I need further analysis as much as I can get at this position?
Offensive line.
Even still, huh?
Is the first thing that jumped into my mind is offensive line. And not just because Ballard always says, the offensive line and defensive line, but just that they're counting on, right now, I think the third tackle is Blake Freeland, who's a rookie. There's not a ton of experience depth there. I think that's maybe the spot more than anything that you want to know, like that they've set it up to see who's going to compete and who's going to play there. And they don't have a ton of, I want to say proven, let's just say experience. We don't have a ton of experience options there beyond what they have in the front five, and I think that's probably the spot that jumps to mind immediately.
Yeah, I go back, Joel, on that topic to a question I asked Chris at the Combine, and saying, okay, do you believe the offensive line issues last season were more personnel-based or more coaching-based? And Chris gave a very politically correct answer and didn't really go down either path. His actions, though, here on June 5th have said coaching versus personnel, right?
Yeah, and I think coaching, and I think the other thing is just development.
Which I guess goes hand in hand.
Yeah, more than anything, it does. Yeah, it's true. It does go hand in hand. But you've also made the point, a good one. I think that like what we saw with Bernhard Ryman getting more consistent, that may have been just the natural progression of what to expect from him, because he was a third-round rookie who was thrown into the fire. And it does feel like offensive line this offseason is the position more than any other that they've been more content to. Cornerback too, to some degree, but they obviously have the high pick there. But offensive line feels like the position that they've been content to just say, okay, we think Bernhard Ryman and Will Fries are going to develop much further than they have to this point. We're just going to count on that. And yeah, I think coaching obviously is part of that. And then I think some of it, we've seen this before with Ballard. He's betting on them developing in their second year, which has turned out well at times, and it turned out very poorly at times, depending on which example you want to show out. So we'll see where it goes. I still keep thinking though that even if you're going to count on those guys in the starting lineup, I would still like to have some depth or some experience depth, just because the chances of those guys playing all the games is so remote. And like I said, right now you're one Braden Smith injury away from having a rookie and a second-year tackle starting for you.
Joel, when teams do the joint practices, and this might be a better question for just Shane Steichen or one of them, but do you believe that when they get ready to do this, that the two respective coaching staffs get together and confer with one another on things they'd like to see? In other words, is it possible the Colts say to Chicago or Philadelphia, like, hey, Can you run some of this against us? Because that's an area that we really want to see, or I want to see how my guys react to that. Do you think there is any sort of discussion from each respective franchise of what they kind of need or want to see from the other as part of these programs?
Yeah, I do. I do think that that's part of it. I think, if one team, I think there's some push and pull there where the team's like, well, we want to work on this other thing. But I do think that that's part of it, because they have to talk about a lot of stuff. Like, a lot of times, whether or not these joint practices devolve into fights comes down to how the coaches set it up in the beginning. And the one joint practice session with the Colts that got a little out of hand kind of came down to Freddie Kitchens in Cleveland just saying he was okay with it, and so that's part of it too. But I do think that they say, okay, where are you at? What are you working on? We're looking for different looks. Like, what can we give you? That kind of thing. I do think there's some push and pull there to how they set up the practices, what they work on, that kind of thing.
Joel, last one, and appreciate the time here on this Monday morning. Bigger year for Kwity Paye or Bernard Ryman?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to go Ryman. I think Kwity
Interesting.
I think Kwity Paye has established himself as a starting caliber defensive end. Now, I understand what you're saying in terms of the, can he take the next step? Can he be top tier? But he's got 4 sacks and 6 sacks the last 2 seasons while playing through some injury. I think he's established himself as a starting caliber defensive end in the NFL. Ryman has not done that yet. There's a lot to like with him, but he also gave up 9 sacks last season, and a lot of them came in really big moments. And I think that for him, he still has to get to that point where you're looked at as a starting left tackle in the league. Whereas I think Kwity Paye is probably there. Now, again, top tier, what kind of money does that mean? I don't know. But, you look at Samson Ebukam, he's been in the 5-6 sack range for a while, and he's been a starter and just signed a $27 million deal. So I think that you can be that kind of guy at defensive line, and your career is going to go pretty well. There's a big difference between being a starting tackle and being a swing tackle or a guy who's seen as a depth piece.
Yeah, it's a good point how you lay it out there. Okay, Wednesday this week. That'll be our final open OTA session. Joel and I will be out there, and then again next week for the mini camp before the Colts take a much-needed, and Joel gets a much-needed break here throughout the month of June and early July. Joel, thanks for the time, man.
Yeah, you bet.
Joel A. Erickson from the Star right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. And just a reminder, Shane Steichen announced this on Friday. We know the Colts will have those 2 joint practices with the Bears. Still waiting on a date for that. That will be, in all likelihood, I think August 16th and 17th. And then they will go on the road for a joint practice. That will be with the Eagles. That is coming up on August 22nd. So a little bit of a wrinkle. The Colts have not done multiple joint sessions in a camp, and they've not gone on the road in quite some time. Jim Irsay tweeted out over the weekend that the Bears joint practices will be in the evening. The Colts will also have 2 other evening practices during this year's camp, plus a Sunday afternoon practice. Full camp schedule coming soon.
They've done the Bears before, right?
As usual. Yes, they have. I believe that was at their own facility.
That's right.
That was closed to the public, I believe.
Yeah. So Ravens, Browns, Lions. I'm probably forgetting one that they've done
the Lions.
At Grand Park.
You know what every player says.
How do you forget the Lions? It was on Hard Knocks.
No, I said I remember the Lions.
Right? Oh, you remember the Lions. Okay, I thought you said you forgot.
Maybe I meant to say, that was the one that, we were doing the show here, but the favorite thing that every player says before these joint practices and then also before preseason game number 1, the most common line, I'm just ready to hit somebody else. We're just ready to hit somebody in a different helmet. We're tired of seeing each other.
Yeah, tired of seeing the blue and white.
That's right. I get it.
Hopefully, for everyone's sake, that training camp schedule gets released pretty soon, and then we mentioned this earlier, but possibly Zaire Franklin on the show tomorrow.
The Browns one of the ones that the Colts practice with?
Yeah, and that was the one that Joel brought up that
Yeah.
Freddie Kitchens and Frank Reich did not see eye to eye whatsoever. Browns players certainly ramped up the physicality and fighting. Colts players,
hell yeah,
took their part in it as well.
That's
but
what I want to see.
Yeah, a whole lot of action there at Grand Park for that one. It's been pretty.
I'm getting my free ticket worth.
Last year was really civil with Dan Campbell and company.
Somebody do something.
Well, they all had to wear ankle protectors, right?
Yeah.
That was the key. When
The ones that protect against like bear bites. And
Kneecaps,
stuff.
right?
Yeah.
Kneecaps, that's what it was. I'm sorry,
that the one?
kneecaps. I'm telling you, the Lions are going to be the sexy pick this year. But I think the Lions are going to take a big step. That's going to be everyone's going to say it.
They certainly are that already. All right, 9 o'clock hour coming up on a beautiful Monday. Kevin and Corey.
911, what's your emergency?
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
9 o'clock hour here on Kevin and Query. Again, a little appointment television tonight for fans of the Indiana Hoosiers. We got to wait, 2 years until they play basketball again? Is that right?
Now, hold on. The game tonight, though, you said appointment television is on ESPN Plus, right?
Well, yeah, you're gonna have to stream it a bit here. I did see there were some games on ESPN2 and ESPNU, but it doesn't look like one of the baseball regionals will be the Lexington one. But yeah, I believe the men's basketball series will get back underway, not this coming season. Maybe it's 2024. I have to double check that. But tonight in baseball, winner advances, loser, season over in Lexington, 6 o'clock. Indiana, Kentucky. Both have beat each other once already this weekend. Double elimination to advance to the Super Regional.
One of those games that's going to be on ESPNU does have local significance, though, because Arkansas is playing TCU, and the winner of that game, I believe, dictates where Indiana State goes, correct?
So if I have this correct, or at least I'm assuming here, Arkansas is the 3 seed overall in the whole tournament. And Indiana State is the 14 seed. So Indiana State hosted a regional. Again, 16 regionals, 4 teams each. So if Arkansas wins, they would host the Super Regional with Indiana
Correct.
State.
So Indiana State would go to Fayetteville.
Right. And then I would assume if TCU were to win, then Indiana State would host, right?
If TCU wins, they go to a neutral site, I'm told. Does that make sense?
That doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, hang on. Let me see what a second one says here.
I mean, I'm not saying that person is wrong, Jake. I'm saying it doesn't make sense.
No, you're right. If TCU or Santa Clara wins, it says here Indiana State will host next weekend.
Okay, good.
So there you go.
Yes, more parties in Terre Haute. I love it.
Fayetteville would be kind of fun to go to, though. You ever been to Fayetteville?
I've heard Arkansas is, like, underratedly beautiful.
It is. So...
The Razorbacks.
Now, was that a horned frog or a Razorback? I feel like it could have been either.
I went for a weekend to Fayetteville, Arkansas when I was in college. And first off, the state of Arkansas, it is beautiful. I mean, it really is a beautiful state. But Fayetteville, when I went there, the thing I found interesting at University of Arkansas, which was a pretty campus and the people were friendly, but every guy there, literally, now I can't speak for now. I don't want to generalize yet again on this program. But at least in 1991, every male at the University of Arkansas was 5'9" and 205 pounds.
Oh. Good, like, third down running backs there.
Literally, every one of them. And little hands. They all had little hands.
Interesting measurables.
Now, John Daly's kid is probably about that size. And
5'9", 205 pounds,
he's
right?
on the golf team at Arkansas. They have a great golf program at Arkansas. Some terrific courses down there. So, yes, the Hoosiers and the Wildcats tonight, 6 o'clock, first pitch from Lexington.
When did college... Okay, is it only since, like, Schwarber kind of put Indiana on the map that college baseball became a thing around here? It seems to me like there is an increased interest each year in college baseball, and in particular the College World Series. Or is it just because we are a society now that because of, and this is not a bad thing, but because of the ability to televise multiple sporting events, we've just become a patterned, constantly thirsting for live sports programming audience.
Yeah. Because of all the 7 and 8 year old brats are watching TV now.
That's it.
I would say the emergence of Big Ten Network helps in the spring. I mean, you are able to air a lot of live spring sports that you weren't able to do previously. And Jake, let's be honest, we just want to watch a winner. It's not like people are showing up to Sunbauer Field to watch 10 and 35 IU. It's like, oh wow, Indiana's got a good baseball team this year.
But I'm saying, like, but even like to your point earlier, you mentioned you're like Oregon State seems like they're always good in baseball. You know, they've been the last handful of years. Maybe they've been a long-standing program. I don't know, but it does feel like the College World Series in general has been more discussed in the last, say, 8 to 10 years, and maybe locally that's because Indiana suddenly was like one of those that was kind of a player in there. The college softball as well, though. I mean, is it television that's creating interest beyond just the big three?
Yeah, I would say television. I think the NCAA has done a nice job from a College World Series standpoint in making sure that they found a spot in the calendar, which is, you know, pretty much the end of the NBA Finals. We're going to put it in primetime on ESPN.
it's an awesome atmosphere. I feel like when you watch it on TV, I mean, you and I have talked about it, Jake. It's like that's a little bit of a sport bucket list item. Oh, yeah. that'd be fun to go there.
It would be fun, yeah.
And locally, yes, obviously what Indiana did. Purdue had a team that hosted a regional a few years ago. Notre Dame got to the College World Series. Again, when you have success, I mean, it's not like, yes, JMV is a huge Indiana State supporter. It's not like he's talking about Indiana State baseball for an hour,
right?
Year in and year
he's
out.
Not like, oh man, if we can just get a second baseman, next year, yeah.
So it'll be fun. We'll see. Again, if Indiana wins tonight, they will advance to the final 16. You'll have 8 different super regionals, and then if you win that, like Notre Dame did last year with Tennessee, you will go to the College World Series. 8 teams advance to Omaha. I should look up how Indy did this weekend.
Here's while you're looking that up, here's another of my sports questions keeping me awake at night. We have not had a lot of discussion on this program, obviously, because it's not necessarily a spectator sport. But literally, either one of you guys know what I'm going to say it, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. Do you know what that is?
No.
That is where, Mark, like, someone will use a word, and you'll say, like, whoa, I've never heard that word before. And then they explain what the word means to you, so it becomes in your mind. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, like, I'd never heard that word before. And then I heard it 7 times in 2 days. That's called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, like when something's on your radar. Let me know when you find the UND.
Yeah. They lost on Saturday, by the way, so they're playing to keep their season alive today at 1:30. And they're in the final 8.
And they're where?
Cary, North Carolina.
Okay. Pickleball is one of those that, like, a year ago I'd never heard of, and then all of a sudden, like, it was everywhere. Like, overnight, it was everywhere. And I know, for example, like, our boss loves pickleball. And it is. I mean, I played it one time. It was fun, except for that, like, it was like a cult. It was weird. Like, I'm at my gym, and this guy's like, you want to play a game of pickleball? I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll play. What do I do? And so they show me. And with it, literally then for like 3 straight days, people come up like, did I see you playing pickleball? What'd you think? Did you enjoy it? Do you want to join? We have a league. No, it was fine. And then I think I offended the guy because I said, they said, what do you think of pickleball? And I said, it was like a deli. Like, it was fine. If I'm hungry, it was perfectly sufficient, but I didn't necessarily seek it out. But, it's fine. And they couldn't believe it. But the gym where I go, there's a point to my story here. They have now taken out the basketball. They had 2 full-court basketball courts that were always being played for pickup basketball. They've taken the basketball courts out and put in now strictly pickleball courts. Now, there were a lot of people that were upset by that because they enjoy going and shooting baskets or playing certainly the pickup ball. So in talking to a representative of my gym, he said, yeah, I think what we're going to do now, though, is we have the proposals in to put in a half-court basketball court in the spot of the old racquetball courts. And immediately I was struck with the irony here is very rich because I'm old enough to remember when racquetball was the pickleball of the late 70s, early 80s. Everyone was playing racquetball. Everywhere you went, racquetball is the fastest growing sport and everybody's playing it. It's great exercise and da-da-da. And it's fun too, right? Like you watch movies from the 80s, it shows like 2 guys playing racquetball. That was the thing. So my question is, do you guys think, is pickleball here long-term to stay? No turning back. It is the fastest growing sport that everybody, and it is great because you can play it into advanced age. Or is it going to become racquetball where like 10 years from now, people are going to be like, do you remember that craze? Which is it?
I think it has staying power for what you just said, Jake, and the fact that you can play advanced age.
Yeah, which is cool.
I mean, honestly, one of the great appeals of why I love golf so much is you can have multiple generations playing in the same group.
Yeah, and you can do that with pickleball too.
Right.
I mean, and I think grandparents can play with their grandkids.
Correct.
And obviously pickleball is a little bit more of a physical activity. You certainly are sweating, you're certainly moving. It's not as strenuous as tennis in terms of how much ground you have to cover. So I think it does have a chance to have some nice staying power because, again, with basketball or with, I guess basketball is probably, of the major sports, basketball is the easiest to play in a one-on-one setting. Just physically, you just can't sustain that over time.
Correct.
Obviously, baseball, football, soccer, whatever else you want to throw out there, it's team sport, so it's really hard to do from a one-on-one standpoint. But yeah, I think that is, I mean, honestly, I was talking about it with some friends this weekend. We were playing golf, and we're all young fathers, and one of the guys who's a tremendous, played college basketball, could have played college soccer, said that his dad tried to play golf with him when he was younger, and he hated golf, didn't want to do that, and now as a young father, he is desperately hoping that his 2 sons will want to play golf with him one day. And I think it is kind of that generational aspect of, if you could go out there, Jake, with your parents and play pickleball, I mean, that's somewhat feasible.
Right.
Like, it's not the craziest idea in the world.
I feel like pickleball is to tennis what shuffleboard is to bowling. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you can do it. The one thing also that's kind of cool about it, I'm assuming this is true of most places. Like at my gym, you walk in and you just get, they're like, hey, we need a 4th, and now you're playing pickleball with 3 people you've never met before. And then, by the end of the match or whatever you call it, like, hey, good seeing you again, whatever. And like, it's kind of a nice social thing for sure. But I'm just curious how long
Well, I think it'll be curious too. Do we see a little bit more public outdoor court investment into that?
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of places that had outdoor tennis courts that will
turn into
it
that.
over. Correct.
I'm picturing those courts just because it's on my drive home, right there at 38th and Meridian. I guess it's more like 39th or 40th and Meridian, Jake, which I know is kind of in your neck of the woods. Do a couple of those courts become pickleball centric courts. But I think the biggest appeal is multiple generations, and for an older age group, you feel like you're doing a pretty competitive, physically, taxing sport, which is hard to do.
Now you get this also, though. So I told you the one time I played.
I do think the scoring's kind of confusing.
It is kind of confusing. And the rules take a little getting used to. But of course, I played, and I thought, well, this is fun. Like, I could do this, this would just walk in every once in a while. If I don't feel like working out for a day, I'll do, because you do actually kind of move a little more than you think.
Sure.
And as soon as I get done, the guy that I played with, who I could tell was vastly disappointed with my inability to immediately be Bjorn Borg, and then his buddy comes up and is like, I just bought the new Graphite 6200. And it was like a Seinfeld episode. They're comparing like the graphite resistance of the ball spin off of the paddle they use, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Right? There's always that guy.
Are you watching the French Open going on right now?
I like the French Open. French Open clay, right?
Clay, Mm-hmm. Which Americans, well, you could probably insert this. American males tend to struggle in just about every major, but I feel like the French Open, they really struggle.
The French Open, typically Rafael Nadal's event, correct?
Yes. Hurt, right?
Correct. I have not been watching it to answer your question.
Djokovic in the field, though, and I believe the last American lost yesterday or Saturday. So, speaking of the French Open, and this is quite the tie-in. The third-ranked woman in the world, Jessica Pegula from the United States.
Okay.
Her parents own the Bills.
Seemingly, that would be. Are they they're not the sole owner? Isn't that a group that owns the Bills?
I thought it was the Pegula family.
Is it? Okay.
You see they're breaking ground on their new stadium today. I want the Bills fan base to win a title, maybe more than any other fan base in professional sports.
I mean, it would be cool to see the Bills win. They certainly deserve it to win, right? Speaking also of stadiums breaking ground, I'm not going to get on my soapbox. Don't worry, guys. I've done enough of that today.
Did Pegula lose?
But am I the only one? I would like for people to text me and let me know if I'm the only one with this, because sometimes I worry that I'm the only one on thoughts. Am I the only one that, I don't know if I would say peculiar, that finds it interesting, I'll say it that way, that the Indy 11 have broken ground on this $1 billion with a B, $1 billion stadium, and I remember it being proposed as a possibility, and yet there was discussion that they didn't disclose how much of that was going to be publicly funded. And so I thought, okay, well, that's still going to be kind of discussed and figured out. And then all of a sudden it's like, when did this get, I'm not going to say pushed through, when and where did this all of a sudden get approved? I feel like most people in town are like, wait, what am I? This is actually a go? I know it's always been discussed, but were you guys aware of the fact that this was a...
I probably should pay attention more to the legislature a little bit more frequently, because I had totally spaced, or I didn't realize...
know, Kevin. I mean, call me... doesn't it seem like that when you're spending $1 billion, that that should probably not be something that just sneaks in through the legislature?
Yeah, and again, I don't know if that's on me for not paying that much attention to it. I had no idea
about the proposal about the new IUPUI on-campus facility that we were talking about with Greg Rakestraw on Friday. Correct me if I'm wrong. Ursal, what's his name, the owner of the Indy 11?
Ozdemir, correct.
He is funding whatever, a substantial, and then the rest is user tax, or do we get clarity on that?
They have not said. The last article that I saw from the Indianapolis Business Journal said that there was not specification as to how much public money was going to be in it. That it would include public money, but they wouldn't say exactly how much. Now, the other thing that I would like to know, I mean, one would assume that this is all with the ultimate vision of the Indy 11 becoming an MLS club. But I feel like
there's so many MLS teams now.
That's like no one seems to. My fear is that there is a hoodwink or a bamboozle here, because no one seemed to really get into the brass tacks of the fact that because there's already an MLS team in Cincinnati, already an MLS team in Chicago.
St. Louis, a new one?
Columbus, I think St. Louis. Number one, I don't think that Indianapolis is on the MLS's radar.
Right, it's kind of like baseball.
Number two, there is a $250 million expansion fee. So to join the MLS, you've got to write a ticket. You got to write a check to the MLS for $250 million, which is only $30 million less than the difference between the cost of Lucas Oil Stadium and the new NASL, USL, whatever league it is, soccer stadium in town.
Yeah, that part of downtown obviously has had some issues, or at least, if nothing else, is a bit of a sore eye. Certainly getting clarification on the funding. I remember when we had Mickey Shuey on from the IBJ back when that story first broke, I felt like that was kind of the big issue on that end of, or maybe not issue, but certainly question that we had on that. And I don't know if there is clarity. I was under the impression that Ursal, certainly, and then the user tax, but I was not sure if or how much public funding would be in
the other thing that I think is going to be interesting to watch about this, I think Diamond Chain is the name of the factory or whatever it is that was last occupying this area of Indianapolis. And I'm probably speaking way above my intellect, which is not hard to do. But one of the key aspects to this that I think is going to be interesting, what no one talks about, that property was originally one of the largest cemeteries in central Indiana.
Yeah, I do remember this being a topic. This is kind of wild.
And it was one of the largest, primarily African-American and Native American cemeteries in particular. They exhumed what they believed to be the majority of those graves and put them in Crown Hill in order to put that factory there. Well, it is my understanding, and I could be wrong here, but it is my understanding that if the second you uncover a human bone, it's not like you just toss it aside and keep digging and building.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I've been told there are some people that are like, look, man, they may still find like hundreds of graves there. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they do, then it becomes, wait, hold on. We've got to stop. We've got to do more excavating. Like, in other words, what could be a 3-year project quickly becomes a much more detailed project than that. And I do think that there are people that were saying, look, there's a reason this land was available, folks. There's a reason this land was available. It's not that easy. You don't just move in and start building. And I don't know. I just feel like there are a lot of like trapdoors to this whole deal. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope with all my heart I'm wrong.
More education on all of it and tying up.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like for $1 billion with a B, and my understanding is they've already like broken ground on this, and I'm like, wait a minute. Like when Lucas Oil Stadium, which was $720 million final price tag by the time it was said and done, when Lucas Oil Stadium, like when they broke ground for that, it was like a massive front page of the paper. Everyone knew about it. Everybody excited. Countdown to the new stadium deal, and this thing is 30% more expensive, and like literally it slid through kind of like oh, by the way, I forgot to mention I threw a Hershey bar onto the rest of the grocery tab. It just is, all of it to me, I have reservation about. I hope I'm wrong.
You guys want to venture to guess how many MLS teams there are?
Isn't it kind of getting close to 30?
I was going to say,
take a guess.
I was going to say 32.
Under.
28.
24.
29.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was getting close.
They want to get to 30.
Okay.
But again, I just think from a market standpoint, you don't want to be as Midwest-centric as they already are.
You got Chicago, St. Louis, Columbus, let's see what else.
Cincinnati.
Here. Cincinnati. I mean,
does Louisville have one? Because I thought Louisville was in the running for the last go-round.
They're in the Indy.
They're in the Indy 11s. Yeah. Louisville City. Yeah, they're in the Indy 11s conference of play.
Now,
Sporting Kansas City's another one.
Of those 20, you said 29?
29.
How many of them have turned a profit?
I don't have that information.
Zero. That's the answer, is zero, by the way. There's never been yet an MLS team that has turned a profit.
Not even with the Apple TV money now?
Zero.
I did think this was kind of a cool story, and I know probably a good chunk of the audience won't really care about it, but certainly a feel-good story from a professional golf standpoint. Yesterday, Victor Hovland won the Memorial, which is probably one of the bigger non-majors of the year. It's Jack Nicklaus's tournament. He wins $3.6 million. Very, very healthy payday right there. This morning, Victor Hovland is caddying for his college teammate to try and get into the U.S. Open. So picture, obviously, a caddy. Victor Hovland is walking 36 holes. He will spend probably 12 hours on a golf course today, walk about 15 to 20 miles for his college teammate carrying his bag. And he just won $3.6 million yesterday.
How much, Kevin,
is that first time a caddy's more popular than the golfer?
Did you see...
Literally.
What's the movie with Adam Sandler?
Happy Gilmore?
Yeah. His caddy was pretty popular, right?
No, he washed all the cars.
I mean,
slightly dirty.
You're playing golf and you're going to like it.
He ate a lot of crackers.
How much at the professional level, Kevin, do you believe that a caddy's job... Do you think it's more important to have a caddy that understands the psyche of the golfer and can keep them loose, or that can help strategize what to use and how to...
Yeah, it's probably like 70-30 mental.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd say about 70-30. I mean, I do think there are some strategic advantages to having a caddy and reminders that are important. I do think when you're at that level, it gets pretty numbery when you're deciding types of golf shots to hit, wind, direction, etc. So I do think the caddy's pretty beneficial. And, hey, let me do all the math, and then I'll give you the numbers that are pertinent, and we formulate a plan for a golf shot and execute it from there. But Victor Hovland seems like a great dude. And $3.6 million. Got the U.S. Open next week. That is out west in L.A. What I always love about that, first Father's Day weekend, but also that will be prime time. And that is an awesome, awesome golf course. L.A. Country Club. First time the U.S. Open has been in Los Angeles, I think in well over 50 years.
Jake, I had relatives who worked at the Diamond Chain. Frequently, when they excavated for foundations or new equipment, they found bodies. So your concerns would appear to be legitimate. I'm telling you. I'm not trying to be funny. Jake, is it a given that Peyton Manning helped keep the Colts in Indianapolis? That's one of the more common beliefs. I don't think the Colts were going anywhere, because at the time that the Colts would have been in negotiation to possibly... If they wanted that new Lucas Oil Stadium, which the city was going to give them, Bart Peterson was not going to allow the Colts to leave on his watch. But what nobody talks about is at that time, the NFL had a policy where in order to move a franchise, you had to have 80% approval from the rest of the league. That came into play because it was so unpopular when Bob Irsay moved the Colts from Baltimore to Indianapolis. And at the time in which the Colts were exploring a new franchise, so too were enough franchises that they would have prohibited anybody from going to L.A. because all those owners knew in Minnesota and in Cleveland and in... I'm trying to think of the other places that got new stadiums or massive renovations to their existing stadiums. L.A. was their wild card. So they were not going to vote approval for somebody to go to L.A. because it would take away their own trump card against their own city. So, no, they were never in danger of going to Los Angeles.
Somebody texted said that MLS is profit sharing.
Maybe, but I know that you can look it up. There's not an MLS team that has turned a profit. I mean, that profit sharing in terms of the money that comes in the television revenue is split evenly amongst teams, and then there's probably a salary cap or whatever else. But that was the big brouhaha when the last time Indianapolis that it was discussed, it was like 2 years ago, that they would perhaps submit their name. There was a long entry of the latest expansion round that they did. I think they want to go to 32. They have 29 now. And that was the big talking point about it. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be cool or that the MLS wouldn't be fun for certain. And the time probably would be now to try to cash in on like soccer has been popular. I think the thing that hurts soccer a little bit is it is a massively popular youth sport in the United States, and I love this fact of it because it is the one sport that all kids can play, and if they're not overly athletic or they're socially awkward or whatever it might be, soccer allows them to learn teamwork and get physical exercise without ever having any sort of a spotlight on that particular kid. That kid never has to go to the free throw line, never has to get in the batter's box, and can learn and enjoy playing with their friends and everything else.
Yeah, don't be the goalie.
Yeah, that's right. But in this country, a lot of times by the time those kids are 10 or 12, they are then venturing into baseball, football, tennis, golf, whatever. There's so many different sports.
Well, financially, it's the easiest sport. You need a ball and 2 trees.
Correct, which is why it's the most popular sport in the world.
Certainly. All right, pop quiz coming up in a few. So 317-239-1070. Jiffy Lube oil change we're giving away for that. Let's lead off the morning check down with the upset in Denver last night.
The morning check down. Omaha! On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We're tied up at 1 in Denver, 111-108 last night. Jimmy Butler was pretty good, but honestly, the undrafted dudes continue to show some impressive resiliency. Max Strus got it started early on. Duncan Robinson, great in the fourth quarter. Gabe Vincent, pretty steady throughout. Now this series is tied at 1. Nikola Jokic with 41, but for the third time this postseason, he's been over 40, and the Nuggets have lost all 3 games.
It's not a series until the road team wins a game. That's now happened as Wednesday. They go back to Miami. Do you have that Gabe Vincent sound you played earlier this morning, Mark?
I don't have that, though. No, unfortunately.
What's that?
No.
Were you just playing that for our own enjoyment?
Well, I was pulling it to see if it was worth using, and then we were like, let's just use the final call.
I thought it was.
I'm sorry.
17 threes for Miami last night. Denver's first loss at home since March. You surprised to see Denver a slight favorite still for Game 3 on the road?
Not necessarily, because I do think that when they're all clicking on all cylinders, Denver probably is the more dynamic team. Miami as a team plays so well together, though, man. I mean, this is what they do, I'm telling you. They just hang around games. They get a lead late in the third. They get a 3-point lead midway through the fourth, and it's 5, then it's 7, then it's 9. All of a sudden, you're like, what the hell just happened?
I thought when Denver punched them in the second and third quarter, it was over. I was like, okay, that was your one chance. On the road in an environment where not a lot of teams have success, period, let alone here as of late, I thought it was over. But darn impressive by the Heat, which we continue to say here, in a remarkable playoff run.
Hold on. I was trying to find the Gabe Vincent.
I've completely thrown Mark off.
You have.
Right now.
Racing yesterday, NASCAR. Kyle Busch, the winner, by the way, in the Ticket Smarter Enjoy Illinois 300. Did you enjoy Illinois this weekend?
I did. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
It was fine.
Where was that race?
I'm assuming Worldwide Technology Raceway, St. Louis.
Oh, is that Gateway?
Gateway, yeah. Kyle Busch, the winner. Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, top 3. All right, give me number 1 through 36.
16.
Number 16 for you, Kevin Bowen, courtesy of Justin Haley. You have won, a year's supply of leaf filter gutter protection.
Oh, perfect. Good.
Just in time.
Mark?
28.
Number 28 for Mark Dykton. You, Mark Dykton, win a lifetime supply, courtesy of Brad Keselowski of King's Hawaiian.
Oh, yeah.
Kings.
Is that the little...
Like the bread. Yeah, making some pork sliders then.
Nice. All right, give me a number, Mark.
30.
Number 30 for myself. Thank you. Courtesy of Bubba Wallace. Leidos, is that right?
Hey, spell that.
Leidos.
What's the sponsor on Alex Pilow's green car? Is it still American Legion? Is it still the 10, the blue and white that we saw?
No, it was Ridgeline. Ridgeline.
Leidos, innovative solutions throughout IT, engineering, and science to solve the customer's most demanding challenges.
That is right in my wheelhouse.
Perfect for the NASCAR.
Kevin and I might have to call them. Most demanding challenges are usually
7 to 10 each day, right? Mm-hmm. Alex Pillow, 6 top 5s and 7 races this year, 2 wins. Jake, a lot of yellows yesterday, but for the most part, Alex Pillow was in firm control.
Yeah, Pillow, before the race, Mark Janes had said to me, he goes, look, if I'm Alex Pillow and Scott McLaughlin, I get together and say, look, let's get cleanly through lap number 1 and just let the mayhem go on behind us and completely check out. I don't think that it was as much a parking lot race as people thought it was going to be, but it was a narrow track. A couple of drivers, Santino Ferrucci notably, friend of the show, had some issues with the right-hand turns throughout. Graham Rahal did. Romain Grosjean did. Rahal's steering went out. It wasn't necessarily his fault. But Overall, I thought a pretty good race, though, and I thought for a first-time event, well-attended, lots of fans, pretty good aerials and visuals. So overall, I think what Roger Penske was hoping to accomplish was accomplished. But Alex Palou, the winner, and now, of course, the points leader as well.
Road America in 2 weeks?
That is correct. A much-anticipated and welcomed weekend off for everybody.
Kind of putting some local ties, I guess, into the morning. Check down Trace Jackson-Davis working out for the Pacers later today. He's among 6. Pretty much a little bit more of a big man feel to this workout for the Pacers. The Fever lost a really competitive game with the defending champs yesterday. That would be the Aces, 84-80. And on the College World Series front, Indiana State moving on to the Sweet 16, if you will. That is a super regional, so just not yet to Omaha. Got to win 2 of 3. Coming up this weekend, they'll either play Arkansas or TCU. Indiana will try and get to the super regional round tonight. That is a first pitch at 6 o'clock from Lexington. Those 2 teams, Kentucky and Indiana, have split already this weekend. So the winner of that one gets LSU or Oregon State.
I stand corrected, by the way. This year, for the first time, 7 teams in the MLS turned a profit, led by Los Angeles, who made a profit of $8 million.
Hey.
David Beckham, baby? Isn't he an owner?
Yeah, he was involved. Remember when he signed there? That was a huge deal.
Yeah,
$8 million, the leading profit.
Hey.
Listener Andrew, who had
I'll
texted about the MLS being profit sharing, I asked him for a little bit more info. The league contractually owns all revenue and then redistributes to the teams. There are additional payouts for performance. Interestingly, when they go after players like Beckham, the league decides which market to place them and how much they want to spend. Was that Messi related? Is Messi in Miami yet, or has that started?
No, I think he's going back to Barcelona probably.
Oh, I thought he had signed with the Miami team.
I don't know. There's some rumblings that stuff might be changing.
Gotcha.
I don't know. I mean, I think the biggest challenge the MLS has, though, is that to fans in this country that are soccer enthusiasts, they still think of it as like third tier, right?
Oh, certainly.
I mean, that's the biggest thing they've got to overcome.
I mean, just look at the TV package. It's on Apple TV.
You know, like people still, they have their EPL team or their, you know, one of the European teams that they most follow. Yeah.
And again, your third fiddle from NFL, NBA. I mean, hell, college sports would probably be ahead of the MLS.
I think even if you're a soccer fan in America, you're watching Premier League or something like that, and MLS is, maybe on your radar if there's nothing else on usually.
All right, time for the pop quiz. 317-239-1070. Jiffy Lube oil change on the other side.
And 107.5 The Fan.
Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with Kevin and Query. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
All right, it is Pop Quiz time here on Kevin and Query. Good Monday morning to you, by the way. Are we good over there?
Dropping headsets.
The headset went flying.
Don't even, anyway. Yeah, we're fine. Thank you. I appreciate your asking.
Talking a little bit College World Series during the break. I'm seeing a lot of hit by pitches in the old NCAA baseball tournament.
If you had to guess, what school has won the most College World Series? Just based on doesn't it seem like LSU has won several?
Yeah, I was going to guess Texas.
Texas would be a good one.
Wichita State.
Florida.
Fullerton. Good one, Scotty.
Clemson's won a couple, right?
Yeah, I feel like Oregon State here lately.
Tennessee in the mix a lot.
Tennessee's a good one. Tennessee, though, isn't Tennessee like the Dean Smith, North Carolina of the College World Series? Like they're always the number one seed that gets upset.
Yeah. Because they're just volunteers. They're just there for a good time.
Mark.
It's hard for them to. Tennessee's really been hurt by the NIL thing, Mark, because nobody will take the money.
Didn't Tennessee spend the most on that quarterback coming from California?
I think that's right.
All right, it's Pop Quiz time. Phone lines are full. JK number 1 through 8.
I'm busy looking up list of College World Series champions. We will go with number 5. We haven't done 5 in a while.
Number 5, Mark Dyke. Tim.
Yes, guys.
What's up, Tim?
Not much.
Tim, how you doing on this Monday?
Oh, pretty good.
Tim, you kind of sounded like the first question of the Pop Quiz was, how are you?
Kind of sounded like a Monday.
Yeah.
You've called the program before, right, Tim?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're doing what right now as we speak?
Going to the grocery store.
Oh, okay. And do you have a long grocery list or just a few items you need?
I don't even know what I'm making tonight, so it's pretty short.
So you just walk around till something jumps out at you?
Yes.
Tim, do you ever, not that, you go to the grocery store 7 days a week, do you ever find Mondays to be a little bit more kind of dry in the grocery store, considering maybe some of the trucks haven't unloaded yet for the week?
I'm off. I go whatever day, so no, not really.
You a married fella, Tim?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Kids, Tim?
Oh, yeah.
How many kids you have?
2. Almost 15 and 16.
Okay. Oh, wow. So I was going to say, I don't know if you know this or not, but high school social supremacy often determined by how good the pantry is in the house.
Yeah.
I mean, Cheryl Jacqueline had the greatest kitchen of all time. Matt Jacqueline's mom would always load that bad boy up with Hostess. We all hung out there.
Tim, who's your favorite athlete of all time?
Bird.
Okay. That's good.
Do we have a Sycamore question on this podcast?
We do.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, boy.
Question number 1 for you, Tim. The Indiana State Sycamores advanced to the Super Regionals of the NCAA baseball tournament with their win over Iowa yesterday in Terre Haute. When was the last time that Indiana State played in the College World Series, right at the apex of Larry Legend's career? Would it be A, they've actually never done it, B, 1995, C, 1986, or D, 1979?
I'm guessing 79.
See, I thought that was confusing when you said the apex.
The apex of his professional career.
Oh, I'm guessing 86.
Okay.
All right, number 2 here, Tim. Nikola Jokic, 41 for the Nuggets last night in their Game 2 loss to the Heat. If you've been listening to the show, you've heard this. It's the third time this postseason that Jokic has scored 40 more points in a game. How many of those have the Nuggets won? 0, 1, 2, or 3?
Well, it's obviously not 3. I think it's 1. I don't remember you guys talking about that. But
I always kind of get dejected when we've said something like 3 or 4 times and then the answer isn't.
Question number 3 for you, Tim. This is one of these Scott Johnston specials that has 19 different factoids in it, so please, we ask you pay attention. Last night marked the 7th time this postseason that the Heat overcame a double-digit deficit to win. The 7 double-digit comeback wins is tied for the most in a single postseason over the last 25 years, but it's happened 4 times. 3 of those were done by the Heat. Name the other franchise to overcome double-digit deficits 7 times in a postseason since 1998. A, the Mavericks, B, the Warriors, C, the Cavs, or D, the Lakers?
B.
That was boy or dog?
Bravo.
Tim, what's the most worthless aisle in the grocery store? The aisle you least traffic.
Probably the soup one.
How about flour and sugar?
Yeah, I don't go down that one either.
Yeah, I do like to see the brownie mixes, but I'm not a big baker. All right,
Sure, you can't lick the box.
Number 4 here, Tim. There won't be a sweep in the NBA Finals. Obviously, Game 3 going to be Wednesday, 1 apiece. There have only been 9 sweeps in NBA history, with Golden State being the last to do it, sweeping the Cavs in 2018. Only one NBA franchise has had multiple NBA Finals sweeps. Is it the Celtics, the Lakers, the Warriors, or the Bulls?
You mean they swept or got swept?
They did the sweeping.
Okay. I didn't hear the first team.
Celtics, Lakers, Warriors, or Bulls?
Man.
It's a good question, Scotty.
You'd have to think Celtics or Lakers. I'll say Celtics.
Okay. All right, last one for you, Tim. Name the last team to sweep the Stanley Cup final. And they did it in an arena that IndyCar drove under its old site yesterday. Tampa Bay Lightning, Pittsburgh Penguins, Detroit Red Wings, or the Colorado Avalanche?
Tampa Bay.
Alex Blow celebrated, right, yesterday?
That's right.
Vegas up 1-0. Did I see that?
They are, yep.
Game 2 tonight, right?
Fairly resounding win
on
game 1.
Our airwaves. Yes, 7:30 our coverage will begin. All right, Tim got number 1 right, Jake, correct? 86 for the Sycamores
That
last
is
time?
correct.
Is correct.
Unfortunately, 2 was a slip-up. The Nuggets, they've had 3 games this postseason where Nikola Jokic has scored over 40. They have won 0. You blew it! Thanks, Tim. Good luck at the grocery.
Solid in knowing that Golden State, by the way, was the answer for the double-digit deal. Golden State also was the team that has swept 2 different franchises. They did it 75 over the Bullets, 2018 over the Cavaliers, and it was the Detroit Red Wings were the last to sweep a Stanley Cup final, beating Washington in 98.
Tim making some pesto pasta tonight. That's going to be my bet on where
That's a good question. What's the lamest? What's the most bizarre, the hardest thing to find? I'll tell you,
hardest thing to find
at the grocery store.
Like it's not where you'd think it would be.
Oh,
one of them is, you're gonna laugh when I say canned pumpkin. So Shannon feeds the dogs canned pumpkin.
Is it in the canned goods?
You would think it'd be like in the vegetable aisle.
Spices?
It's over by the
bakery
spice.
and stuff, I would assume.
Yeah, it's like down by like the flour and sugar and cornbread mix.
That's a reminder. I've got to get Rosie a birthday cake. Rosie's turning 3 a week from today.
Oh man,
we're gonna go Taylor's action.
Nothing wrong there. You got to get the orange fluff.
Rosie, what type of cake you want? Pink. Chocolate or vanilla? Pink. So we'll see.
She knows what she wants.
Pink cake. Last year was a purple party. We've progressed from purple at 2 to pink at 3.
Okay.
That's where we're at right now. All right, we'll do it one final time here. Kevin and Corey.
to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
No idea how the topic came about, but Mark was just asking about newer playground area games that you have noticed. Correct?
Well, it's because you came up with that. You had that term that you used earlier for explaining pickleball, and I was like, what was that term? Because there was another one that came up in my daughter's school. Has this, like, it was just like, it almost looked like a construction zone where there's all these barriers around. I was like, what is that? And she's like, oh, there's a game called Gaga Ball. It's a Gaga ball pit. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And apparently it's like a game like dodgeball, but instead of throwing the ball, you roll it, and there's a group of kids in the ball pit, and you can throw the ball off the wall and all that and try to hit each other until there's only one kid left. So that's how that works. And ever since she mentioned it, I've seen it pop up. It's all at like playgrounds around the area and stuff. So something I never heard of like 3 weeks ago is all the rage apparently.
So let me give you three, since you guys have young children, let me give you three things that were common.
Sounds very sophisticated, Mark, by the way.
It does. Here are three common playground things that were on school playgrounds when I was a kid that I'm guessing are no longer around, okay? The witch's hat.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
The witch's hat is like a...
Unfamiliar with that.
Scotty, how do you describe the witch's hat? It's a you have a pole. The witch's hat was a device that went down over it with like a round bench all the way around it, and you would sit on it and it swung back and forth. You can go around in a circle or swing it really high back and forth. I mean, like it's
a teeter-totter situation?
I wish I could draw it. This is not good for radio, I realize. We'll move along here. Merry-go-rounds?
Yeah, I mean, certainly know what they are. I just think the sheer size of them doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Slides, big electric slide, or not electric, big. Sorry.
Oh, we had a wedding?
No, big aluminum
Here comes
slides.
Grandma.
Yeah. Like, are those still around?
Yeah, slides are everywhere.
Yeah, the worst was when you get on those metal slides in the middle of the summer. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Goodbye, flesh.
Yeah, monkey bar's still alive.
Are the monkey bars still around though?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Big hit.
How about just big, like as Scotty writes down here, asphalt and gravel tracks?
I mean, it does. I was talking to my nephew. Was he 7? About to be 7, and they play Foursquare at recess. Which, I mean, Foursquare was huge for us back in the day. Huge. Yeah.
I'm trying to see. Hold on. I can't be the only one that had a witch's hat at our school, right? But like, I look at it now, I'm like, that thing was like a disaster waiting to happen. I mean,
honestly, it is kind of crazy. The monkey bars are still around. Just like, I mean, how many kids have probably fallen off that?
I knocked myself out in elementary school on those.
Yeah. How many kids just fallen off that?
Woke up in a third grader's arms.
I forget who the major league player was yesterday that tripped over the first base. Did you see him land on his neck? Did you see that? He was fine, but boy, it was just one of those really just awkward landings that could have gone pretty poorly here. So ESPN Plus tonight, Mark, is that what you said for Indiana, Kentucky?
That's what it looks like. Yeah, I checked my ESPN app, and that's what it looks like. Yep.
Again, we'll find out Indiana State location-wise and where they're off to. Stanley Cup Final tonight, Game 2.
Nice job. Drop the S off that.
Drop the S, yeah. Golden Knights, they 5-2 winners, 6-2 winners over the Panthers?
They're going up 2-0 tonight.
Game 1, and then we'll have to wait till Game 3 for the NBA Finals.
Brendan King better have plenty of little kings.
Trace Jackson-Davis working out for the Pacers. How much do you think these workouts matter?
I don't know on the court that they matter as much as the body language,
So it's more of like a personality test?
I kind of think so. I mean, you know, you hear the stories of like, yeah, we drafted a guy, and you know, when he came in, he actually missed like 9 straight shots, and you know.
Wasn't it Marshawn Brooks that like outplayed Klay Thompson in the Pacers workout?
Yeah, I mean, come on, right?
Yeah. I thought Tony East made a good point when he was on with us last week, maybe the week before. You know, there's so much kind of early career turnover in the NBA that it's so beneficial to have as many workouts as possible just to get intel on these guys. Think about Jordan Nwora for the Pacers. They didn't draft him, but Jordan Nwora's in year 3? And all of a sudden they make a trade for him. And now he's here, and I'm not going to act like he's the most important piece, but if I'm making a top 7, top 8, Jordan Nwora's in that.
You know, how often do we hear, Kevin, like in the NFL, that some guy gets drafted and they're like, well, actually, we were scouting so and so on that team, and this guy's the one that just kept popping out on tape. So we said that's the guy. So you wonder the same thing, like with these workouts, are they looking at player A, but they're like, man, like we were really interested in player A, and this guy just kept. So maybe in those cases it does pop out a little bit where you can really introduce yourself. It would be hard to think that Trace Jackson Davis, that there's a whole lot about Trace Jackson Davis that the Pacers wouldn't already know for the obvious reasons, right? I mean, aside from just the fact that he's from here and played at IU, they've seemingly would have known him since he was basically at birth, right? I mean, he's been around. It'd be interesting to know how much, and I know the dynamic with he and Dale Davis is a little bit different, but, was he around? Are there pictures of Trace Jackson Davis like in the locker room when he was 3? I don't know. I don't know how long, when that relationship really began or whatever else. But, you kind of forget, right, that he's been around it his whole life, basically.
So the Cleveland Browns, remember this name, just cut Joe Haig, former Colt.
Yeah, he was he a North Dakota State guy?
Yeah. So what do you think that is? Ryan Grigson had 5 drafts. If I set the over-under at 5 players still left from those 5 drafts, would you go over or under?
Still in the league?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say under, I think.
Ryan Kelly, Dorsett.
What was the last year he drafted?
Henry Anderson.
The shelf life average anyway.
2016. All right, Zaire Franklin hopefully tomorrow. Steph Wilson?
Yep.
All right, everybody have a great day.